recording secretary here tonight. Barbara, will you take notes on any action items? We'll call this meeting to order. Roll call attendance. Brian Boyle.
Present.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Kelly Bowes.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
Here.
Amy Cantone.
Gentile, yes.
Gentile, sorry. Steve Finnegan.
Present.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Barbara Kinska. Also present are the superintendent, Dr. Brian Cochran, and also the assistant superintendent, Chris Kellen. And I'm the board chair, Kim Farah. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Before I begin the meeting tonight and get to the first order of business, I have spoken with council and I do want to take a moment to address the rules of order at the board meetings. First, these meetings are meetings specifically for the board to conduct its business. As a board, we have duties and responsibilities that we have to address for the district to continue to operate. So while our board meetings are open to the public, except for non-meetings and non-public meetings, our board meetings are not public hearings where the public has the right to speak out. In other words, board meetings are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. Second, while the board welcomes participation of all interested citizens, all attendees are expected to conduct themselves in a civil and respectful manner, and the board will not tolerate interruptions, harassments, discrimination, threats, or other conduct that interferes with its meetings. There's an appropriate time and a specific manner for citizens to be heard at board meetings. This is during the delegate session. Board policy, BEDH, governs the process for citizen participation in board meetings, and I'll read as follows. In order to assure that persons who wish to appear before the board may be heard, and at the same time, it may conduct its meetings properly and efficiently, the board adopts as policy the following procedures and rules pertaining to public participation at board meetings. During the delegate and individual section of each board meeting, residents may comment for no more than 3 minutes, unless waived by the board, by completing a comment card and submitting it to the recording secretary at the beginning of the meeting. Consistent with RSA 91A:3, this policy BEDB, and the laws pertaining to student and family privacy rights, the board will not place any matter on the public agenda that is to be properly discussed in a non-public session. Complaints regarding individual employees, personnel, or students will be directed to the superintendent in accordance with policies KE and KEB. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene, libelous, defamatory, or violent statements will be considered out of order and will not be tolerated. The board chair may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if the speaker does not follow this rule of order. Persons appearing before the board are reminded that members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals in official matter. Thus, questions may be directed to individual board members, but answers must be deferred pending consideration by the full board. Therefore, board members will take comments and presentations from the public under advisement only. Third, because some members of the public in attendance of our meeting have not followed the rules of order, I do want to put everybody on notice that the board intends to strictly comply with policy BEDH. It requires that all citizens do the same while attending our board meetings. Interruptions, name-calling, booing, and speaking and making intimidating and bigoted remarks during the meeting will result in removal from the meeting. Violations of policy BEDH shall also result in immediate removal from the meeting. Thus, please only speak during your allotted time, limit yourself to 3 minutes, and refrain from speaking about employees or students, and conduct yourself in a civil manner. Finally, failure to abide by these rules of order will, at a minimum, result in your loss of speaking privileges. If, after losing your speaking privileges or receiving a warning, your conduct continues to interfere with the meeting or otherwise violates the rules of order, law enforcement will be asked to physically remove you from the meeting. As you may be aware, once detained by law enforcement, you may be subject to criminal charges. I would also like to ask Officer Pat, who is our school resource officer, to come and just say a few words before we start the meeting.
How we doing? I just want to let everybody know we are here basically just to keep the peace. The topics tonight are probably heated topics, and I understand that. We all understand that. We want everybody to be able to have their chance to speak, but we're going to ask that you please do what you have to do. Don't be disrespectful of other people. Please don't be booing, yelling, and screaming. We are not here. We do not want to have to get involved in any of this. It's just to keep the peace, and I want you all to know that. So if you could all just abide by the rules and regulations tonight. You'll have 3 minutes to speak from what I understand. Use your 3 minutes to speak when your 3 minutes are up. Please just remove yourself from the mic and let other people get their opportunity to speak. Thank you.
First order of business is approval of the minutes from August 5th. Is there a motion to approve the August 5th minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Second. Sheila makes the motion, Kelly seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor? 9-0. 8, I'm sorry, 8. 4. 0 against.
Abstain, sorry.
Sorry, okay. Let's revote. All in favor of approval of the 8-5 minutes? 7. Against? 0. Abstaining? 2. 7-0-2. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the delegates and individuals. Board members, I would like you to be aware that there are well over 40 delegates and individuals.
33. 33 forms, 34 with an overtime.
34. So there are 33 forms. At 3 minutes apiece, we are looking probably close to 2 hours.
I motion that we have 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes or the first 10, and the rest will go at the end of the meeting.
A second.
There's a motion on the floor. Barbara makes a motion. Sheila seconds.
Discussion?
Open for discussion. Brian?
Well, I'm going to vote against the motion. I think we should go an hour, the amount of people that are here.
You want to go now?
I want to go an hour because the amount of people that are here.
I would support that.
I would as well.
So it's going to be increased to 20 individuals at 3 minutes? The first 20?
I would say the first hour. The first hour.
First hour.
Right. Okay.
If we can make 20, we can make 20. If we can make 25, we make 25. We go an hour. If everyone's respectful and does their 3 minutes, we should get 20 in.
Just wanna
And the
understand all
remainder
parameters.
will be done at the end of the meeting. We're not cutting them off, we're just doing it at the end.
Do you want to remove your motion?
Does somebody want to amend it?
I'll amend it.
Okay.
Can we amend it, or?
You can amend the motion.
Cool. I'll amend the motion to allow for 1 hour for delegates.
Is there a second on the amendment?
I'll second that.
Brian seconds.
Discussion.
Discussion?
The only thing I would say is, we're doing 1 hour, but if it starts to get unruly, 1 hour as long as it's all moving smoothly. If it starts to get unruly, we end it and move to new business.
That's correct. That is within the purview of the board to rescind public participation. Okay, so there is amendment on the floor to limit the time for delegates to 1 hour. We are voting on the amendment right now. All in favor of that amendment? 9-0. Now we'll move to vote on the amended motion. The motion is to now allow for delegates and individuals for a period of 1 hour, with the remainder to be heard at the end of the business of the meeting. Any discussion on the amended motion?
Kim, can you just tell me who seconded that?
I
Thank you.
He seconded the amendment. Okay. We're now voting the amended motion. Any discussion? All in favor? 9. None opposed. Okay, so let's move on to the delegate session. The first person is Alexander Gray from Sandown. We don't have a second item. And just in the interest of time, the next person, if you could come down towards here, to this mic would be Daniel Quimby from Plastow. So, sir, Mr. Gray, go ahead.
Can I remove my mask?
Yes, there are no masks required right now.
Okay. Obviously, name's Alexander Gray. I graduated here in 2017. My little brother recently graduated, and I have a little sister that goes to this school system. She is below the age of 12, so she cannot get vaccinated. I'm here because my mom asked me to be here because she was afraid for pretty obvious reasons. What she wanted me to express specifically was having responsible policy implemented into this school. Recently, as of last Saturday, a 13-year-old girl by the name of Micaiah Robinson died in Raleigh High School in Mississippi because they did not require masks, and she was exposed to COVID-19 and was exposed to it as of last Friday. I speak for multiple parents when I say that one child's death is one too many. One child getting sick and having irreversible damage because of that is one too many. And I also wanted to say, on my own piece, that I shouldn't have to come back here 4 years later so I can tell people who are twice my age why we should listen to people why we should listen to thousands of experts on basic public health safety and not divide it over partisan political lines. And I yield my time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Quimby, and next at the other mic will be Mr. Shaw.
Hi, my name is Daniel Quimby. I'm a Plastow resident and homeowner. I'm very sorry for the position the school board has been put in by this pandemic. This is not an easy job in the best of times. Watching the past school board meetings, I've been disgusted by the way the residents of this community and people from outside the community acted. I understand that you didn't run for the school board to become mask police. However, we did elect you to keep our kids safe. Part of making the decisions are making hard decisions that won't make everybody happy. Any medical doctor will tell you universal masking and social distancing work. If I were in your position, I would be much more concerned with students' health rather than the anti-maskers and their half-veiled threats. Elementary and many middle school students are not old enough to get the vaccine. Since we as parents can't protect them with the vaccine, we need you to protect them with a mask mandate. I don't know if anybody here may not remember the polio pandemic. My father had polio. Back then, it was bad, and he got very sick, and it was awful. But what people don't understand is right now it's even worse. He can't walk in his backyard without a walker because it affected his brain in a way that now his movement's breaking down. That could be happening with COVID in 50 years from now. We don't know. If you aren't going to step up and mandate masks, how do you plan to keep the school safe? Have all the ventilation systems been updated? Will social distancing be kept in place at 3 or 6 feet? What about lunchtime? Are they going to sit on top of each other like they did before COVID? None of these questions have been answered. And as parents, we need to know what you're going to do to keep our kids protected from this pandemic, which, by the way, is clearly not over. Thank you very much. I yield my time.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, and then Ms. Walsh from Sandown is next at this mic.
Yes, hello, my name is Brad Shaw. I'm a resident of Plastow. I have 2 children that are involved in the school system. I am also an occasional substitute teacher in the high school and the middle school. I just want to thank the board for hearing me for just a few moments of their time. My thoughts are, I'd like us to remember that we're not in this in ourselves, that our actions affect our neighbors. When we do things, let's remember that we need to live in this community together. And that I asked the board if they would respect our CDC guidelines our government officials. And I ask that they follow the data and that they've come up with good guidelines that both protect our freedoms as well as protect our children's health. I'm not going to say I'm for or against a mask mandate because that will depend on the data. And I want you to just be open-minded about either side and not be, let the scientific data guide you and don't listen to folks that are more emotional than scientific. Thank you for the time.
Ms. Walsh, go ahead, and the next speaker will be Ms. Steinfort-Rivas.
Good evening. My name is Terry Walsh. I am a resident of Sandown. My son will be attending the 5th grade in this district. I would like to present to you recommendations from our local experts. The first is from Exeter Health Resources, which states, the leadership of Exeter Hospital and core physicians and the physicians and providers of core pediatric and adolescent medicine strongly support the unambiguous and clear guidance from the CDC, AAP, and the New Hampshire Division of Public Health and Services regarding the implementation of masking policies by local schools, districts this fall, as they plan for the reopening of school and in-person learning. This letter goes to summarize the clear guidance from these experts, which includes universal indoor masking for all students, staff, teachers, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. Their letter further states, unfortunately, New Hampshire is experiencing a resurgence of COVID-19 and now has once again reached substantial levels of community spread across the state, clearly triggering the recommended universal use of masks by both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals in indoor settings. In addition to this letter from Exeter Health Resources, I am also here to include another letter from the local doctor from Dartmouth-Hitchcock, who also recommends that wearing masks is essential to ensuring that students can return to school safely. I brought copies for you all and ask that you please listen to our national and local experts to keep our kids safe and in school. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will pass those out to the board right now. Go ahead, please.
My name is Deirdre Steinfort-Rivas, and I'm a resident of Sandown. We have 2 children in our home, aged 3 and 6. Our 6-year-old is about to start 1st grade in a few weeks. Obviously, at their age, vaccines are not available, so masking is one of their only protections. I'm not going to use statistics, medical reports, and science-based articles to argue. Plenty of my friends here are doing that already. People will choose to read and educate themselves or not, and I trust that you, as the board, are doing your research thoroughly. I would, though, like to ask you all to think back over the last year and the sacrifices we have all made in the name of keeping not only ourselves and our families safe, but our entire community as well. Congratulations, clearly you all survived those relative inconveniences because we're here to talk about it today. Wearing masks to the store and other public places not only protected you, but it also protected the other patrons, staff, and your families at home and their families as well. Limiting contact and attendance of large events did the same. And yes, having a school year that ebbed and flowed from remote to partial remote to in-person as needed, all contributed to our district being as safe as it has been. It was because we all worked together to that end. The benefit of this far outweighed the temporary setbacks and inconveniences. What has happened to that community first mindset? Why have some parents suddenly decided that the pandemic is over and their children are the only ones that matter, and that the safety of their child's classmates, teachers, school staff, and their families is of no concern? All it will take is one COVID-positive student or staff member to completely upset the apple cart and land us all back to where we were last year. just when parents are finally able to, or in the case of those who worked in Massachusetts, now have no choice but to return to work. All it could take is one case to potentially cause countless family members within the school community to be severely affected on many levels. A safe public education is a right. A private one is a privilege that not all of us can afford. So that should not be thrown at us as an option. If a family truly does not care for the community, then they should be invited to stay home or attend private school, not the other way around. By voting to keep masks optional, you are essentially punishing those of us who are trying to play by the rules and put this community first. I would beseech you to vote for opening with masks being required for the very least for students and staff pre-K to 12, if not all students and staff. Vote for protecting all of this community. Thank you.
Ellen Moore, and then Parker Davis, please. Sheila, are you? You are. I don't need to. Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Thank you for all who are working diligently in behalf of the taxpayers and their children in this district. I am in support of masks for all in the upcoming school year, and I'm hoping that the board votes in favor. As a parent of 3 children, one of which has become known as an oldie, as in, if COVID hits him and has a devastating result, he will be characterized as it is only because he had a pre-existing condition, an only. Can you imagine one of your children's lives meaning less than another's because of circumstances beyond your control? How incredibly miraculous it is that your child is with you and well, but that mine's life is disregarded by others and holds less value. My child is not alone. Statistically, 43% of children have one of the top 20 major underlying health conditions. That's nearly half. It's heartbreaking to me that I have to add a new level of concern for sending my children to school because of cavalier and opposing attitudes. The fact that these attitudes are louder in volume and more aggressive does not mean they speak for the majority. I hear many comments in regards to my child, my choice, or our family decides what is best for ours. While I agree with that sentiment to a point, once one's child crosses the threshold of public school, the greater good of the community should be considered, not only the individuals. Parents can choose optional masks when it is in their family time and outside of the school community. But inside the walls, there are general rules and guidelines for all that need to be adhered to. Student handbooks exist for this reason. Parents cannot pick and choose which points of the handbook are optional for their families. The other most used phrase is, then homeschool your child. When did it become that one taxpayer's right to choose weighs more heavily than another's? Why is it that the safety of my child becomes less valued than someone else's because they have a different opinion? Public schools have long been main sources of services for children with special needs and services that are not provided in private schools. Yet, as we stand, parents are having to stand up again and ask for those most vulnerable to be protected by institutions that were built to protect them. Masks are not a far-fetched safety item. The county is at a substantial risk, and many local communities are masking as a result. Public places are requiring them more frequently as well. We need to protect our children at all levels. Just as we lock school doors, have fire drills, have active shooter drills, we need to ensure they are all safe in higher risk than benefit scenarios. No matter what the vote is, it won't please everyone. The definition of a successful vote, however, is that...
Thank you. Mr. Davis and then Jennifer Bisson.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Words matter. These words matter. Some would argue that the order of these words matters, where life comes before liberty. Many in New Hampshire would argue the reverse: live free or die. The truth is, these rights must be balanced in the context of the greater good. Modern life is full of examples where the public or their representatives make rules to balance things like public health and safety against civil liberties. Take smoking. We can't smoke in most places because that would infringe on the rights and impact the health of others. Vaccines have been required to be admitted to our public schools for decades to protect our kids and our communities. My wife and I like shooting guns, and our kids will grow up knowing how to handle them safely and responsibly. But that doesn't mean they can bring loaded guns or even bullets to school, because that would be a serious danger to public safety. Make no mistake, COVID can be a bullet for the unvaccinated. From the unmasked mouths of babes to everyone around them. No mask can stop all the bullets, but universal masking means less bullets in the air are getting through. That's how we stop this virus and keep our schools open. Choice matters. We exercise choice when we elect our school board and bestow upon you the most sacred of responsibilities: to educate our children, yes, and to protect them and keep them safe when we cannot. We depend on your courage and wisdom to make the hard choices without compromising your sacred trust to protect these innocents, especially those under 12 who don't have the choice to be vaccinated. New Hampshire DHHS recommends a reasonable balance with masks required when community spread is high, or optional when spread is low with no significant outbreaks in the schools. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, one way or the highway. All parents deserve a safe choice, and every child in the district has the right to a public education. If you cannot provide a safe environment for our kids in school,
Sorry, you need to yield the microphone. Jennifer Seavey, you'll be up next. Ms. Bisingo.
My name is Jen Bison from Sandown, and I have an 8-year-old daughter in the district. The last place I want to be right now is here at this meeting. The last thing I should have to do is to speak here at this meeting. I should be home right now, putting my girls to bed, knowing that the district will do what is right to keep our kids safe when school starts. Please know there are many other parents that wanted to attend tonight, but felt too intimidated and threatened, especially after watching the last school board meeting. Instead of being home tonight kissing my girls goodnight, I must be here to speak because I am concerned that the district will not do what's best for our children because the right choice is not always popular. My daughter needs to be in school, in person, for so many reasons, but we are seeing examples around the country that when schools open up without safety precautions, they go remote real quick. And remote learning is not good for my child's educational needs or her social or emotional well-being. In a pandemic, with her being too young to be vaccinated, sending her to school to be surrounded by hundreds of others who are unvaccinated and unmasked is not safe and it's not common sense. And it will most certainly result in a return to full remote. And one thing that we can all agree on is that no one wants a return to full remote learning. No one likes wearing masks, and no one is excited about their kids wearing masks. But my 8-year-old gets it, and she barely complained last year. Once school was open fully in person, she had an amazing school year despite having to wear a mask. She made new friends, she grew socially, emotionally, and academically. Wearing a mask caused her no harm in any way, but it kept her from getting COVID. In fact, there was at least one child or person in her class last year that had COVID and she was exposed, but she didn't get it because they were all wearing masks. No one wants their kids in a mask all day. I don't either, I get it. For that reason, I would like to ask that the kids spend as much time outside unmasked as possible. The kids loved when their classes and lunches were outside last spring. Let's make it a goal to increase that mask-free outside time for our kids as weather permits. Please adhere to the recommendations of our local medical professionals, CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and countless others to keep our kids safe and in school in person. Thank you.
Ms. Seavey, and after that, Ms. Kincaid.
Hi, I am Jennifer Seavey. I am here on behalf of my grandchildren. My children graduated Timberlane some years ago, and now my grandchildren are going through it. Both of them under the age of 12. Both of them not able to be vaccinated. I don't understand why people can't see that the masks should be worn, especially on these kids. We as adults should be protecting them. They're looking to us to protect them. I'm asking you to really think about what we're dealing with here. Look at what's going on in the South. The children are sick. They're in the hospital. The ICUs are full. It is heading this way. We will end up in the same situation. The unvaccinated are the ones that are being hit the worst. And who were we sending back to school? Children. And when they're K through 12, they can't get that shot. So the one thing that they have to protect them is that mask. I didn't write a speech tonight. I'm just hoping that you will listen to what people here have to say, really think long and hard about what we are doing to these kids. They do need to go back to school. They do need in-person learning, but they also do need to be protected. And that's all I have to say.
Hold on. Michael Travers is next. Excuse me, no, if you could just sit down, please. I am going through the order in which they were received in my hand. Mr. Travers, ma'am, I'm going to ask you again to please sit down and not speak. Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lauren Kincaid from Plastow. When I was first thinking about what to say and how to present myself tonight, the first thing that came to my head is to come without wearing any clothing. To make a very crude point about personal freedom and choice. I'll spare us all that experience. God only knows what social media will do with that right now, but whatever. Not only because nobody needs to see that, but because it doesn't help anyone. Nobody changes their mind based on shock value, it just incites more division. This is really stressful for all of us, and bear with me for a sec. Can I just invite everyone to just take a deep breath? Just inhale, exhale, oh good, I hear people doing it. Inhale, and exhale. I have 3 kids in this district, and we have struggled this year on many levels. No one really knows the right answers, but we're here for the very same reasons, keeping our kids and our community as safe as possible during this public health crisis. And by safe, I mean physically, emotionally, and academically. This is going on all over the country right now, as we know, and we can be just like every other town, or this could be an opportunity to be even a little bit different. Our kids are learning every minute of every day, whether they are in homeschool, remote school, or on school break. And right now, they're learning how their parents and community deal with a public health crisis. I believe there is enough passion and commitment in this room, right here, right now, to solve a heck of a lot of problems together. It would be hard, but we could take small steps. And we can teach our kids that they can do hard things, because we already have. Some of you who have very divergent views from my own are my friends. And I'll tell you, me arguing my views against yours will get us nowhere. Maybe it does have to be this way. Maybe we're not ready to let go of our self-righteousness, including my own, enough to problem solve together. Did you know that as mammals, we are literally wired in our brain stems to divide into opposing groups during times of stress? And did you also know that we have the capacity to override this ingrained programming by using the more evolved portion of our brains? There's words that I'm just going to eliminate here because there's no point. But if you are willing to take that breath together, then there's a chance you're willing to work together. Find creative solutions for those families and kids who struggle with whatever it is that ends up happening. If not, well, that's okay. We are who we have come to be. But I really hope you took that breath.
Mr. Travers and then Melissa Marr.
He doesn't want to speak. He's too intimidated by all of this, but I will speak briefly for him.
Could you come to the mic, please, so people could hear you? Could you just, for the record, state your name?
I'm Tia Travers. I'm Michael's mother. He wants this done. He's over it. We both came here for tryouts this week. We both walked through these high school corridors this week. I can't even imagine wearing masks in the way that they are right now. I couldn't breathe without a mask. My kids come home. I have 4. He has 3 little sisters. Come home every day, anxious, like you wouldn't believe, about having to wear a mask on the bus, to school for 6 hours during the day, coming home with headaches, coming home with impetigo up their nose. I'm done. I'm a single mom, I'm a widowed mother, and I have all of this responsibility by myself. He was gonna take it upon himself to come up here and speak, but it's nerve-wracking to see all of you and all of you sitting here listening to him. The masks are not necessary. We all know that the science isn't behind it anymore. It's all for show. They're not needed. There's enough out there that everybody should know that this isn't the answer. Vaccines are not the answer. Masks are not the answer. There's enough science behind the fact that vaccines are causing this variant that everybody is so scared of. So I'm sorry, but I don't agree with the masks, and I think it should be done, and so does he. He has super anxiety about it. He has my youngest is going to 3rd grade, has fallen super behind because of all of this. I have 3 with IEPs, including him, and it's just making matters worse. COVID has ruined so many lives, and enough is enough. We need to move on, get some normalcy back in our lives. You can see the overwhelming response with people who are done with all of this and just want to get back to normal. If you want to wear masks to school, go for it. Don't make everybody. Let everybody choose what they want to do. Enough is enough.
After Ms. Mars, Sophia Loik, L-O-I-K. Go ahead, Ms. Marr.
You all know me, and I've been at most meetings advocating for my children, and I've sure always conducted myself in a professional manner, as many of us have. Earlier this week, I had a totally different idea of what I was going to say tonight, and then something happened on Tuesday that made me really just understand that this just is never going to end. I can sit here and tell you all the facts and scientific data that back up my request for optional masks, as it seems that there's data on either side that you can find. I can tell you that the pediatric ICUs might be full, and they're full with a lot of RSV cases. I can tell you that natural immunity has taken center stage, and that much of our local population has natural immunity. None of that is going to matter. People have their minds made up to believe any hype and sensational scary news. A patient of mine told me last year that her daughter was a champ with masks. She never complained. And then the journals came home from her school year, and she was reading them and started crying. Every journal entry was that she was hot, she didn't like her masks, she couldn't breathe. So she suffered in silence through the year, and her mom thought she was a champ. That's heartbreaking. They tried with the vaccine, but the vaccine doesn't work like they intended. It doesn't work like a traditional vaccine. This is not like your measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. Breakthrough cases are no longer rare. People are still dying, even fully vaccinated. Vaccinated or not, everyone is now on the same playing field. We have staff in our district who publicly say one case is too many. We aren't eradicating this virus. It's here. We need to learn how to continue life with it and not hide from it. We need to stop counting cases. They'll always be here. We need to stay home when we're sick, and we need not to send our children to school when they have fevers and are miserably sick, finals or not. Kids need full sports seasons. They need to socialize and eat lunch with friends, and they need to be in school. If we head into this winter for a full second winter of what we did last year, we will not be able to come back from the mental health trauma of it all. I firmly believe in mask choice. I ask you to vote for mask choice. In the event that you do not, you need to allow for exemptions, and you need to make them optional outside and for all sports, indoor and out. Thank you for your time.
Jacqueline Wydola. Go ahead, Sophia.
I have noticed during my school years it's very hard for us to capably breathe when we're wearing the masks, and it's annoying our ears. Because around the cords they are making really tight things, and it's getting really stressful outside, because on really hot summer days it's really stressful for our heads and for our throat to not be hot, because it's really hot with the mask covering us on the hot days. And outside it gets really hot, and inside.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wydell, and then Grace Lynn.
Hi, I'm Jackie Wydola. I am from Atkinson, New Hampshire. That was just my daughter who addressed you with her concerns and the discomfort of how that affects her and her classmates during the day, to be wearing this, to have them wrapped around their throats when they're eating and choking them. She was so excited to be, I get to voice my opinion. I get to go up there and speak for myself. She was so excited. I'm so proud of her, Sophia. You did an awesome job, honey. I love you so much. I've been up here voicing my concerns about masks. Me and a lot of these parents have been here all throughout the summer before we took our recess. My mother was arrested for attending this meeting without a mask. I'm glad to see none of you guys wearing masks. It's so great to see our faces. I love that. I don't believe anything I have to say will persuade you. I've done a lot of my own homework on where the money is going around and how that affects our policies, about how our teachers union provided recommendations to the CDC that they use, and now you default to their recommendations as if they're not school union recommendations. Somehow I'm supposed to forget that made it through into your policies. I'm really disappointed in just in the response of, being talked down to, the way that we've been treated, and then being painted as bullies. I'm so glad to see you parents here. A couple weeks to school, it's great to see more participation. I'm glad you guys are paying attention. We've been paying attention a long time. I might be pulling my kid out of this district. I'm not getting her vaccinated. I'm not sending her in a mask. That's a very real possibility. I will not stop coming to these meetings, however. I will still be here fighting for the other kids in this district, fighting for my neighbor's child and all the other parents who actually are too afraid to come up here and get yelled down by whatever authority you guys cling to that makes you think that you can decide for us. I'm going to yield my time at this point. I just really want to come up here and say I'm proud of my daughter for speaking up for herself, because that's the kind of person I'm raising.
Graceland. After you, that would be Bonnie Bali. Grace, could you tell me your last name, please? Could you tell me your last name, please?
Bali.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If you want to wear a mask, you can wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask. We are in America, and it's a free land.
Hayun Jacobus, after. Go ahead, Ms. Bali.
Hi, so yeah, I'm here again. My kids would like me to keep coming up and speaking. I'm here for my community. I'm here for the people behind me. I'm here for parents like Julia Healy, who has a 7-year-old with a diagnosed anxiety disorder and a sensory processing disorder. And over the last 2 years, because of the mask, has digressed excessively, and to the point where he uses the mask as a shield is almost non-communicative. So I'm not here to talk about what ifs, but ifs, possibilities, because we did that in March 2020. Okay, you guys were tasked with the unimaginable task in September 2020 to try to keep every student safe. And we could say it was the mask, or we could say it was because we have a 99.9% survival rate. Who really knows, right? Okay? But what I do want to say is that it's unfair to keep going on to this possibility because we have last year's data. We know what happened last year. We know that 0 children died last year. Okay, we know that in February 14th of 2021, 50 children of New Hampshire were waiting, not able to get in because they were already filled, waiting for emergency beds because of a mental health crisis. New Hampshire had never seen that before. Last year, only 15 kids were hospitalized because of COVID. So COVID is not an issue. Mental health is an issue. It's a huge issue. And we have parents speaking to the mental health of their children. We have community members speaking to the mental health of their children. And it's not fair for you to keep talking about this possibility, let's implement because of maybes, because we have the numbers and we know what happened last year. So if you attempt to implement what happened last year again, then those increased anxiety in the children is on you guys. Okay? The increased depression is on you guys. The decrease in academia for our middle school, for our elementary, for our high school will be on you because remote did not work. Many parents sacrificed their time. Many parents sacrificed their sanity. Many parents sacrificed their paychecks to make it work. We've already complied. We already did that last year. We did that last year. Please don't put it on us. You have it. I understand fear is real. Fear is very real. Okay, I'm with you. We're all fearful. I get that. All right, but school is not a medical facility. It's not a medical establishment. You're an educational system. Okay, your focus should be education, and that's it.
Mr. Pelletier from Plastow, you'll be next at the next mic. Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. I have come to read a letter from a concerned mother in Danville who can't be here this evening. Her name is Christina Harris, and she has a son who is 5 years old. Here we go. My youngest son will be entering kindergarten this year at Danville Elementary. He is a happy, funny, and sweet boy who has a speech impediment. Although the No Child Left Behind program is no longer in effect, the mask mandate has me thinking about it. As positive and happy as my son is, the one thing that really frustrates him, that really makes him feel less, is when people cannot understand what he's saying. It makes him wonder why he speaks different than other people. Wearing a mask will undoubtedly make this struggle much more challenging for him, and his speech therapist will tell you when speaking that it is important to see the movement of someone's mouth. I understand that some parents do not feel comfortable with their children without a mask, and I completely respect that and understand where they are coming from. This is why I think masks should be optional. The parent knows what is best for their child. Don't you agree? You can see our children's needs in stats. What I fear is that my child's self-esteem will be impacted by wearing masks. Is it fair for him to be left behind? I come to you not as an adult fighting for my rights, but I come to you as a parent fighting for my child's right. For the right for him to feel equal to his peers, please make masks optional. Thank you for your time. And here is my take here. It is a myth that masks prevent viruses from spreading. The overall evidence is clear. Standard cloth and surgical masks offer next to no protection against virus-sized particles or small aerosols. The size of a virus particle is much too small to be stopped by a surgical mask, cloth, or bandana. A single version of SARS-CoV-2 is about 60 to 140 nanometers or 0.1 microns. The pore size in a surgical mask is 200 to 1,000 times that size. Consider that the CDC website states surgical masks do not catch all harmful particles in smoke, and that the size of smoke particles in a wildfire are 0.5 microns, which is 5 times the size of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Wearing a mask to prevent catching SARS-CoV-2 or similarly sized influenza is like throwing sand at a chain link fence. It doesn't work. Requiring children to wear a mask sets the stage for contacting any infection, including COVID-19, and thank you.
Mr. Pelletier, then Mr. Tarosian.
Nolan Pelletier, Plastow, 17-year resident. I moved to New Hampshire from Massachusetts, and one of the reasons was freedom. I believe I have that right. I have that freedom to decide what's best for my child. I don't think that the school board does. I know what my daughter has been through, and she does not want to wear a mask. She wanted to come here as well, but she is super shy. So I'm here speaking for her. I have spoken up for her before. This past year was very difficult for all of us, and all I'm asking for is give parents their right. They have the right to choose for their children. We know what's best. You know, you're not my enemies. You're not my enemy. And I appreciate you have the choice to decide what's best for your child, and all I'm asking is I want the right to decide what's best for my child. It's been very difficult. I think we both feel sometimes that we don't have control over certain things, and I just want to mention that this year is actually kind of different. So if you feel, this is for you guys too, if you feel that you haven't been represented, the Education Freedom Account has been passed, so you might be eligible for $4,600. That's from the state. That would be your state money, and that could go towards any school or homeschooling. So just remember there's other options. Thank you very much. I yield the rest of my time.
Mr. Kylie?
You said Mr. Tarosian's next,
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Thank you.
go ahead, and then Mr. Kylie.
Can everybody hear me all right? Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the school board, thank you for having this meeting tonight and listening to your constituents speak in regard to this matter. I was just here last month when the board voted to rescind the mask mandate, and I applaud you for that common sense ruling. When you look at the current statistics regarding COVID in New Hampshire, the numbers are still statistically the same as they were when you made that vote. I'm not going to reiterate the top 11 causes of death to adolescents, but I will remind people that nationwide in 2020, 132 people, children or adolescents, died from the COVID. The number one killer of children was motor vehicle accidents with over 4,000. So I would suggest that the board consider, if you're truly interested in things that are causes of harm to children, to consider maybe banning students driving to school. But anyway, earlier a speaker talked about choice does matter. And I agree with that. Choice does matter. And it should be parental choice to decide whether students should wear a mask or not. A few years back, I founded, with my wife and co-coach, the Himalayan varsity ski team here. And one of the things I learned as a coach was that parents of students that I had on my team that were involved with their child's education, overwhelmingly, and statistics bear this out, their students did better academically and almost with any other event, extracurricular event they did at the school. Comparing that to students where parents weren't involved and left all the decision-making up to the school, they didn't have as good a result. I'm going to just quote a couple of facts here that have come out recently. One, so I'd like to cite two op-eds, one by Marty Macari, a professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and Cody Mesner, the chief pediatric infectious disease expert at Tufts Children's Hospital. They both said that masks can lead to increased levels of carbon dioxide in the blood and that they can be vectors for pathogens if they become moist or are used for too long. They both indicated a warning also in regard to the impacts on verbal and non-verbal skills when it comes to children that may be hearing impaired. In closing, I'd like to just say that I believe parents are the best decider for what is the best medical decision for their own children, such as wearing masks. Allowing for the medical and family circumstances of each child to be taken into consideration and letting the choice fit the specific family and individual child needs to be considered. No child should be forced to wear a mask. No child should be shamed for the decision to remain unmasked. No child should be shamed for being unvaccinated. And that goes for what they
Mr. Kiley, and then Liz and Maggie Sierpien. Sierpien. Go ahead, Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Dave Kiley, Atkinson. As many of you are aware, New Hampshire DHHS developed a decision matrix published on August 11th to implement certain mitigation strategies based on community levels of transmission. Our community transmission right now is 189.8 cases per 100,000 over the last 14 days and a 6.5% positivity rate, which indicates substantial rates of transmission in the community. I want to ask a few questions. First one is, what defines a case versus an infection, at least prior to 2020? What drives case rates? What drives positivity rates? And while transmission definitions are the same, what has really changed over the past year or so? Cases versus infections. Prior to 2020, a case was defined as when someone seeks or requires medical treatment or hospitalization. An infection was simply the presence of a pathogen without respect to symptoms or need for treatment or hospitalization. Currently, we have 1,910 active cases, formerly known as infections, in the state of New Hampshire. We have 77 hospitalizations, formerly known as cases. 75% of these cases are detected using PCR tests, which is under emergency use authorization only, while the other 25% are used the antigen rapid test, which is more effective when symptoms are present. There are unfortunately only a very small number of serology antibody tests in use right now. Questions I have again. Are SARS-CoV-2 PCR tests FDA approved? Does it actually test for the virus? Can the PCR test determine viral load? Can PCR tests distinguish between dead and active virus? Is there proof of asymptomatic spread? It's been 18 months. Why don't we have PCR primers for the actual virus yet? I strongly urge an investigation into these questions, and if the answer to any of them is no, how can you conclude that case counts can be an accurate indicator of community transition? Our Timberland population is 25,000. So do we really want draconian restrictions at a 14-day case rate of only 25 infections with potentially 0 receiving medical treatment or hospitalization and no consideration for the risk profiles of those aged 0 to 19? What has changed? Okay? As much as numbers can be, gross numbers can be misleading, rates by themselves can accomplish the same historical results. Positivity rates go down and test behaviors go up. Winter drives this, contact tracing. Even the beginning of school, testing is naturally lower in the summer and more targeted. April 15th, when the mask mandate was lifted, we had 5,794 cases. Today we have 2,783. It's a 52% drop. Deaths, 16 over a 14-day rate on April 15th, 5 over the last 14 days. I got plenty. Thank you.
Jim Serpy.
Hi, my name is Liz Serpian. My husband and I live in Plastow with our 3 children. I want to sincerely thank all of the members of the school board who voted at the July 15th meeting to start the school year as masks optional. We're asking that this policy remain in place for this school year. This year we will have 2 children at Pollard and 1 at the middle school. Last year my 2 daughters were at Pollard, and every single day, they came home with severe headaches to the point where they were completely nauseated, all because of the forced masking. I was giving them Tylenol almost every single day when they got home to try to stop the headaches. Oftentimes, they would have to miss their after-school activities. They'd feel better at bedtime, and when they woke up, they'd feel fine. Then they'd go to school in their masks, and the headaches would come right back. They couldn't even go to the nurse's office, because if they went to the nurse to ask for Tylenol, they would have to come home for a COVID test. Forced masking literally made my healthy children sick, caused them unnecessary daily pain. This is not an opinion, it is something we experienced firsthand. And I'm asking the masks be optional so that every family has the right to do what's best for their own children. We support every parent's right to know best how their circumstances are and make personal health decisions. If parents feel safer with their children masked, double masked, wearing an N95, that is their right and no one is taking that away. But their right to parent their child stops at my children. I'm here tonight with my 9-year-old daughter, and she would like to tell you how forced masking made her feel.
When I have to wear a mask all day in school, I feel really bad. It makes me have a really bad headache, and it makes me feel like I might throw up. It's really hard to breathe, and my mask gets in my mouth. I always feel like I have to touch my mask to fix it, and people keep telling me to speak up because they can't hear me. And it also makes my glasses get foggy. When I get home, my headaches make me not want to go to activities. The light hurts my eyes, and I'm really excited to go to school again, but if we have to wear masks, I'm worried about having to have all the same headaches every day.
Last year, we pulled our 4-year-old son out of Pollard School due to the mandatory masking, and we sent him to Holy Angels Pre-K. They did not mandate masks for their children. Our son was able to learn, play, and even eat together with the other students, hands-on for the entire school year. There was not a single COVID outbreak or forced school closure due to COVID. There are many schools that have these results, and it's possible for Timberlane as well. COVID isn't going away anytime soon. Please, let's not ask our children to keep keeping us safe. Let's let these kids be kids. Let's let them go to school every day and not think about something on their face that's reminding them that everyone is sick around them when that's not the case. They shouldn't be afraid of their friends, and that's what we're teaching them. Please, let's stop this. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir, then Gracie Griffiths from Danville.
Jim Serpian from Plastow. No matter what we hear as recommendations from CDC and other agencies, the data is still going to show you that, as for the entirety of COVID, that COVID does not danger our children. As of yesterday, CDC data, the state of New Hampshire, for people 19 years and younger, there have been 30 hospitalizations. May sound like a lot. 0.16%. 0.16% hospitalization rate for these children. 0 death rate, as others have said as well. Further, the argument is going to be that children are super spreaders and infect the community. Death rate for the general public in the state has plummeted now, average 0 over the last 7 days. Still staying low. Don't know where the argument is to mask our children when you actually look at the data. And again, data from the CDC tracked by the state. Might be based on headlines or word of mouth because it's not based on data. If we really look at what we did to our kids last year, we've done far more harm than good. We've significantly limited learning and social and speech development, forcing them to wear masks. We put an irrational fear into our children that this bloodthirsty killer is lurking all around us. And when they take off this face covering, they're going to die and kill everyone around us. And we know that's completely false. 0.16, I'm going to say that a couple times again, that's the hospitalization rate. Further, we closed gyms and fields, not allowing our children in sports leagues and other activities. What does that do? Well, only made childhood obesity and mental stability worse. We should be far, far more concerned with that than we are with COVID with these children. Does it make sense to reinstate a mandate which is significantly more damage to a child's emotional, mental, and physical well-being than any potential benefit for our community? It's a good question. So we have a decision to make with these masks and other shutdown measures. Those decisions should be kept mask optional and up to us parents, all of the parents. We have the freedom, it is our children, as many have said on both sides. Let us decide what is best for our kids. If we decide to mandate these masks and shutdowns, we will not be doing our job as educators nor making a logical, data-based decision, 0.16% hospitalization rate. Again, that's the whole time that COVID's been there. We go towards masking, we're looking at a political stance, really plain and simple. So keep the choice to the parents. My child is my decision, just as someone else's child is their decision. Avoid spreading unnecessary panic that is based on headlines only. 0.16%, thank you.
After Gracie Griffiths, Dennis Griffiths from Danville.
My name is Gracie and I'll be a freshman this year. I think that masks should be optional and it should be up to the parent and student of whether or not they want to wear a mask. I know several kids throughout the district who were overjoyed when they found out that masks would be optional. They were so excited to see each other's faces again. I hope masks will stay optional for the sake of all the children. Thank you for your time.
Dennis Griffiths, Steve Crone after Mr. Griffiths.
The woman who is the breathing, I need that. Okay, so serenity now. Okay, I'm certain you know my feelings on mandating masks for the kids, personal choice, freedom, liberty, the parents' right to make health decisions for their own child. I came here tonight to speak to what happens when you, as a board, do decide at some point down the line that masks should be mandated, even if partially or for a limited time. As you know, we kept our daughter from the classroom because we will not have her masked. That was our health decision. And although she did exceedingly well in a private homeschooling setting, she lost out, and by extension, her classmates lost out from learning from one another. So here we are again, with 18 months behind us, 18 months of science and studies from around the globe, and we are still entertaining the foolish idea that masks are helpful in a way that will stop this virus. They will not. Nature will win. And until nearly everyone has been infected and the human species evolves to live with it or kill it off, it's going to be here. Someday soon, God willing, you'll look back on this time to reflect. Some of you will feel shame for abusing these children, and you should. So, what will you do when your backwards logic dictates masks are no longer optional? Send my kid home? Seems rather one-sided. How about this time around, we put those parents who are the least flexible, those parents who want to not only control and scare their own children with this mask nonsense, but also the same parents who demand they control and abuse mine and others. How about they take the impact of that decision? They should keep their child home if they are scared. They should have to feel the stress of that situation. And perhaps they would then understand that choice is always better.
Mr. Cronin and then Mr. Weeks.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members. I'd like to change the pace a little bit and say I think the work on the arsenic remediation that's being done is really important. Before living here in Hampshire, I lived just south of Flint, Michigan. And obviously there was a pretty negative outcome there because some choices were made to delay care for water treatment. Absolutely, please go ahead, bypass the bid process and get that done as soon as possible. My background is a pediatric ICU nurse in Detroit before I moved here, before I became a product manager for a medical device company here in the Boston area. One other heads up unrelated to COVID is you guys were making a decision about busing and whether or not to do the bid process now. I can attest that the supply chain right now is really hurting for a lot of car components and that it will probably be more expensive for vehicles in a year or two. So the choice to put the bid process now is probably preferable than delaying it for another year before you start that process, in hopes of getting a lower cost for the actual vehicles you're going to use. On the COVID front, I'm a believer in science and a believer in my profession as a nurse. We've known for hundreds of years that good hygiene practices reduce disease, including hand washing and preventive behavior, not exposing healthy people to sick people to healthy people. That includes wearing masks. When I serve and work in a hospital, I'm required to wear a mask whenever I enter any patient who has a communicable disease via the vector like COVID-19. And the arguments that that's not an effective practice is not true and goes against everything we've seen in research as a medical profession. We believe in hygiene. It's often more practical than some of the therapies we have. So I highly recommend we continue these efforts. I've also heard a lot of parents talk about the results right now in New Hampshire. I don't want us to mistake the results of our successful behavior as a cause to remove that behavior. We've chosen to wear masks. We've chosen to isolate over the summer. We had a dynamic policy where we looked at the number of cases and decided whether or not we should or shouldn't be masking or social distancing. And as a result, our cases are low. Congratulations, board. An excellent decision and a well thought out decision. Our gratitude to you for taking the time to think about the things you need to in order to make this decision. And rather than saying you should do this or you shouldn't do that, I think your approach of looking at the board, looking at the data, making a decision on a case-by-case, term-by-term manner is the best way to go about it. Thank you very much for all of your service and good luck tonight.
Mr. Weeks will be the last one before we move to the business of the board and then resume these later on. Go ahead, sir.
How you doing? I'm Anthony Weeks. I have 2 kids that are in school. They're 8 and 5. My 5-year-old started kindergarten. Obviously, neither one of them get vaccinated. Until those children are vaccinated, I mean, you gotta wear a mask. That is what the science says. I know they're saying science is not what's going on, it's the other way. It's not the case. They're also saying that, hey, we're not your enemies. Well, the deal is if those kids come in and give my kids COVID, then we're all put at risk. I mean, that's just common sense. You have to help out your neighbor. Send your kids to school with a mask. It's not hard to do. I mean, really. I know everybody up here has their own feelings towards it. Your job is to protect our kids. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. Everybody here. Follow the science. That's all I can say. I'm not going to go through statistics and all that stuff. You know what it is. And as far as everything is coming down, it's because those kids haven't started school yet, guys. Yeah, like, down south where they have. Just saying. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, everybody who's spoken, and we will continue this on when the board regular business is complete. First item on the agenda is the school reopening update. Board members, in your packet, you should have that update. It's not in my packet. Is there another one? Oh, let's see, it's this packet. Well, I want the superintendent to have it. Here, it's in this packet. Oh, he has another copy, okay. So this is, this executive summary is on the school reopening plan. What we do see here is, I'm going to let either superintendent or assistant speak to this. Did you want to speak to the updates here on this? You're looking for the board to approve this because this is a change from previously?
Yeah, I could speak to it. We know that other school districts are coming to the point where they're making decisions on reopening plans, some of which are going mask optional, some of which are not. I think we had a very successful year last year. in terms of both risk mitigation and also making the best educationally that we could. I'm proud of the work that we did as a district in terms of the education despite the obstacles. My biggest concern is that we don't really know at this point in time what will happen if we strip away some of the risk mitigation pieces that we have. We do know that there's significant evidence that the transmissibility rate of the Delta virus is just about double the original virus. And I am concerned that if we are we're dealing with a virus that is more transmissible and we reduce the actions that appear to have been successful last year, that we risk moving out of a fully in-school model to having to go either to a hybrid or remote. So part of my recommendation and part of the administration's recommendation is that we look at using the model, the risk management model from the New Hampshire DPHS. It's been around for a couple of weeks with the data that basically says there should be a relationship between the level of community transmission and cases within the facility, in this case schools, to decide whether masks are optional completely, whether they're used in targeted places, or whether or not there's universal masking. Last year, about 20% of our students were fully remote. This year, if we bring all students back, the social distancing spaces that we'll have will be less. Last year, we basically were at 6 feet social distancing in most cases. This year, we're looking at 3 feet, which means that there's a greater chance of transmission. And so the recommendation is essentially to open the year with masking and monitor for a period of a few weeks to see what happens both in our facilities and also elsewhere. If we find that other facilities, other districts are having a significant spread, then would inform a second decision one way versus another. What I don't want to do is make a decision with a more transmissible virus, knowing that much of the risk mitigation practices that we leaned on last year would not be there. So that hence the recommendation. Basically, we use the DPHS grid, which at this time would put us in mask required because of the substantial level of community transmission.
All right, so I'll open the floor for discussion before we entertain a motion. Go ahead.
I had 2 questions for Dr. Cochran. Number one, if we do have the masks indoor in school, when the students are at 3-foot distance, are they going to be allowed to take them off?
At 3 foot, I do not believe that that is the intent.
Okay. And the second question is, how often are you going to make the decision on mask versus no mask days on the checking community transmission rate?
I would think that if we started in that model, that we would wait no longer than 3 weeks to see how it's going. 3 weeks, 4 weeks would give us a pretty good indication. My biggest concern is that if the risk mitigation factors are taken away, that we would, as I said, potentially have to go from a fully back mode in the classroom to either a hybrid or a fully remote model.
The horse is out of the barn.
I'm sorry?
The horse is out of the barn.
Yes, essentially. So for the sake of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, do we want to see what's happening elsewhere as we involve masking, or are we going to wait or do we go in and not mask, only to find out that in fact it's going to be a significant time before we're going to be able to get back to a position where we could even contemplate not masking. So.
Sean and Kelly?
Yeah, I had a question in regards to one of these tick marks that you have over here on the columns for universal. I'll just read it right now. Exceptions can be made for classrooms/schools that have achieved a high greater than 80% vaccination rate or when other prevention measures can't. So does that mean that we're going to be inquiring about people's status about a vaccine, if they've taken it that's experimental, is not mandated by the state, and you're going to ask them to disclose their status of that to us? I mean, are we going to actually be like Exeter and write it on them so we can?
No, I don't believe that's the intent. We met as a group last week, and asking students their vaccination status was not a strategy that we even discussed.
Well, it definitely didn't make it in this document then.
I'm sorry?
It didn't make it in this document because it's actually part of here as one of the subnotes.
That's just a chart from the New Hampshire DPHS. That's not our school chart. That's just in there to show that's New Hampshire DPHS chart. That's not ours.
What are we going to be voting
It's
on?
referred
We have
to
it in
that.
front of us.
The first page,
First 2 pages.
the recommendations on the left-hand column.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there going to be opportunities for students to be outside more often? So lunches, additional recesses, or mask breaks?
I think that the circumstances will be hopefully open to that. We know that frequent mask breaks do help. We have involved our nurses and public health, local public health in this decision. I think these are the sorts of conversations that we need to have. If we go this route, how do we try and make this the best experience that we can for the students? Can we and should we have more mask breaks? I think that we still have time to have that conversation. I know we've met and discussed this multiple times, but we haven't really drilled down to that level yet. But I think most of the conversations that I've been privy to would suggest that we should probably look at more mask breaks, especially if it makes a significant difference for students.
Thank you.
Brian?
Okay, I'm just opposed to what I'm seeing in front of me here tonight to vote on, to follow these recommendations. I understand there's strong emotions on both sides of this argument, but some simple facts are that at this time last year, no one was vaccinated. And we had a pretty successful year. Now we had more than half our people vaccinated, and we're betting against ourselves, and nothing's happened yet. And I just don't get it. So I'm sorry to not support the administration, because I usually do. But on this particular item, I just think this is too important, so I'm just against this.
Sheila?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you. I just want to make clear a couple of things that are on here. We all know that the new federal mandate for buses have gone out till January 18th. Kids will be required to wear masks. That's out of our control. But
Sheila, what was that? What date was that extended?
January 18th, per the federal government.
Thank you.
It's a federal mandate related to all conveyances. So any bus.
Next is that I see here in this plan, which is different from last year, that masks are not required outdoors.
Correct.
So that is something that we're going to start with right out of the get-go, correct?
Yes.
So recesses, no masks. Anything outside, no masks, correct? Which we tried to do at the end of last year, we couldn't. Okay. The third thing I want to say is I want to thank everybody for their emails. That did send them out. If we didn't get back to you, I'm sorry, but one had actually a full email and I couldn't get it back to them. Some were extremely kind, and I want to just personally thank you for those, because I do appreciate the kind words. But the emails that I received, I basically had 29 that were in favor of masks and 12 not in favor of masks that came through my door, came through my email. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, because people, you hear, doesn't mean that you're the majority. Excuse me.
Excuse me, could we please have order in the audience?
I'm all second.
Amy?
I just have some more logistic questions, I guess, but I would also like to thank folks for their emails. I was inundated with emails, so I tried to call back people that asked for a call back, but I did read everybody's emails, and I appreciate the time spent. I would echo Kelly's sentiment to say that I would love to see more outdoor time built into the schedule, especially at the elementary level, for mass breaks. I'm also wondering about the logistics for lunches and distancing being maintained in the lunchrooms, what the plan is for that. And I'm wondering too, with the numbers that I'm looking at for some of the classrooms, it seems like we've got 26 in some rooms. I'm wondering, is it possible to maintain 3-foot distancing with 26 kids in a room?
We have Mr. Peterson and Directors Peterson and Canotas speak to those. I can tell you that those, because of the unknowns, some of your questions we will not have definitive answers to at this point in time. The number of students coming back will result in a significant change because, as I said earlier, that we don't have a fully online piece. And if you noticed, last year we were at 6 foot social distancing, and this model calls to strive for 3 foot. So we don't believe that we have the classroom size and classroom numbers to be able to say unequivocally that we can maintain 3 feet social distancing in all classrooms. Mr. Peterson?
As Dr. Cochran said, we have measured classrooms and looked at the space of the classroom versus the class rosters, and there are some classrooms that we cannot get to 3 foot, so we're striving for 3 foot as much as possible across the district. In the cafeteria, as you asked, last year we were at 6 foot because we made lots of changes. We had pandemic floaters that could also help monitor overflow classrooms. We had increased the number of lunches, at least at the secondary level. Elementary level, I don't want to speak for that, but there was kids eating in their classrooms rather than in the cafeteria. So lots of logistics went into that, changing that for last year at 6 foot distancing. This year we're looking into what that would take. It is going to take some of those same types of things to do. Furniture, changing the furniture, the way that we have furniture in the cafeteria, not using cap tables, but using the desks that all went back into the classrooms. So in order to get to that 6 foot in cafeteria, we're going to have to change all the classrooms again. We might have to change furniture again. We need to go to those overflow classrooms and have lunch monitors in those overflow classrooms, which we just don't have the staff right now to be doing that. So we're striving for as much distance as we can get. It is just a complicated puzzle to just say definitively we can go 6 foot, we can go 3 foot, because there's lots of moving parts that go into that. Between furniture, rooms, or available rooms, and just bodies to watch those kids in those spaces. While the weather is nice, we are hoping to use outdoor spaces as much as possible for eating. At least the high school and the middle school have courtyards, have spaces that we can safely put kids outside to eat. So we are looking at that as a resource.
Could I just ask a question here on this chart? You've got level of community transmission, minimal, moderate, and substantial. Does that parallel the charts that we see on a weekly basis in terms of what is considered minimal, moderate, and substantial? Meaning, is that going to trigger this matrix also?
So the data that I provide the board on a weekly basis, I actually monitor it daily, but the data that I provide to you weekly is coming directly from the state. The minimal, moderate, substantial is state metrics. And so, yes, those are one and the same.
Wanted to make sure.
Director Curtis, was I to take your answer to essentially we have the same issues at the elementary level that Mr. Peterson described at the secondary level, striving for 3-foot social distancing, concerned about social distancing when we're eating lunch.
In all of our schools except for one.
Can you use the mic, please?
In all our schools, except for one grade in one school, we can meet 3 feet in the classroom, but the cafeteria is a challenge. We will have to get creative in order to maximize spacing.
Sean?
What is the definition that we're going to be using for minimal, moderate, and substantial?
Sean, that's been published and provided to us on a weekly basis
No,
throughout the year.
I agree, so that means that we're not changing that, and we're gonna be
No.
basing this stuff on, you know, what Rockingham County is, so that Portsmouth is gonna dictate what this school district does?
Sean, if you look at the data, there's no way to break it beyond the county level because it can be individualized.
How come then we can get in there with the Danville infected radius then?
Mark,
Chairman.
Look at the data, Sean.
Yeah, I did.
No, you did not.
Just because you say
We've had data on a weekly basis from Mr. Pedersen for over a year, and you are now questioning where that data is coming from?
No, I'm questioning that we do have the specifics that can turn around and isolate it to what is in the district. We're making decisions based on what happens in Exeter and
Mr.
in
Pedersen, can you
Portsmouth.
speak to that, please? Thank you.
If it's defining the matrix that that we're using on here.
Sean, Mr. Pedersen is going to speak to that data.
Okay.
So, if I could speak for a second, this was a major piece of the conversations that we had about what data do we have at a local level and the reliability and what we can read into that data as opposed to at the county level, and also in terms of what the implications are. We know that as we get further and further away, we get more data, but it doesn't necessarily represent us as well. At the same point in time, the way the data is represented is problematic. So, Mr. Peterson, if you could help us on that piece, that would be helpful.
So first, I think I have to go on record that I am not an epidemiologist. I'm not a medical doctor.
Neither are any of us.
I'm providing data that comes to me from state epidemiologists, state medical, healthcare workers. The state call that I was part of on July 11th, Dr. Chen did say that the recommendation from New Hampshire DPHS is that schools use the county level data. So from an epidemiologist, from a medical advice, he was saying that decisions should be made using that county level metric. As far as to the point of the actual data, using data from the county versus the 4 towns, that the minimal, moderate, substantial is using, and somebody's probably going to call me out on this, but the rate, if I have the wording exactly right, the rate of new cases per 100,000 population, parentheses, last 14 days, close parentheses. Now, that data is provided nightly, or Monday through Friday nights, usually post around 7 o'clock at night, for all the counties, or for everything. If you look at that data for the 4 towns, it is not available. And the asterisk to that says something to the effect of, it is not available at the town level for cases in cases that are 1 to 25. So I don't have that same metric at the town level that I have at the county level. Did I say that right? I don't have the same metric at the town level that I have at the county level because the state is not providing that new cases per 100,000 population, parentheses, last 14 days, close parentheses, at the town level, because it's saying it's 1 through 25 and it's not provided.
Brian, then Sean.
Mark, first of all, thank you for keeping us abreast of this data weekly. But obviously, the data as of August 18th there's no one in school right now. Correct.
Correct.
So, will we get data? You know, when you go to the state, will you get data for some people under 18?
In regards to?
Any of this data, you know, like obviously when they're tracking cases, they're tracking it by county, and do they break that down by any chance, like for people like over 60, under 18, or do they do that way?
I guess I'm not following.
I'm trying to understand well, obviously.
I don't believe so. I think it's raw numbers. I've never seen it reported broken down by age group.
Okay, because I would certainly hope that obviously the really relevant data here is the student data here. So I would just ask you a question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you know, from the state data that I'm providing, it's not broken down like that. It's you know, county level data or town by town. The town by town data is, you know, in active cases they're giving numbers, but it's just a straight up number.
Sean?
So that was just the point that I'm looking to make, active cases. I know for a fact that our fire chief gets updates on that on a daily basis. So that information exists.
So,
and Dr. Ferry, you were a selectman, so that you would know that.
Perhaps our fire chief should provide that link to Mr. Pedersen then, because he says that he does not have that data. So there must be a disconnect. Thank you for sharing that, John.
Okay. Can I point? I do have access to active cases, but the metric that we're looking at, the minimal, moderate, substantial, is based upon the metric called rate of new cases per 100,000 population. It is not based upon active cases. I also have active cases, and I've provided you the data of active cases as well. They're two different metrics.
And then that would be per town, correct?
The active cases is per town, correct?
Okay, so then Dr. Ferry, did you happen to see that over that duration?
Yes, I have seen that,
All right,
John.
well then, we do have localized data then, correct?
But you cannot use that metric.
No, we're deciding not to use that metric. That's what we're doing.
John, that metric is not available. That is what Mr. Pedersen is saying.
How is it available, but yet we have the data for it? We're consciously deciding not to use that.
And why do you think that is, Sean? Is there some reason why we're not using that? Maybe from a statistical point of view, as the state epidemiologist has pointed out, it is not a valid way to calculate that because the numbers are too low. Let me clarify by low. Excuse me. By low, I mean, as I said last time when Barbara was bringing out a metric that would have closed the school, that you can't use such a small population to base a metric on when the state is basing it per 100,000. Do you want to do it on 4,000? Let's do that, Sean. What should we do on
Maybe the number should be adjusted, but let's have the discussion about it. That's the point. We're never having a discussion about it.
Have the discussion. Go ahead. What would you like to discuss?
I think the problem with that is that the lower you go, the higher you're gonna be at a maximum. You can't do it that way, because you're gonna be in a worse situation than you are now.
I disagree, but.
Mr. Peterson, can I ask a clarifying question? Is this a statistic where when the numbers are relatively low, we just get an estimate of 1 to 5, 1 to 4?
Well, for active cases, what the state produces at active cases less than 5, it says 1 to 4. And that's why, again, the rate of new infections per 100,000, when it's less than 25 in each of the towns, they say it's 1 to 25. They're not giving me a definitive answer. They're saying it's somewhere in between 1 to 25.
So the smaller the geography, the less information we get about the actual ratio, because we're getting an estimate, because the concern is that the numbers are so low, and when you get down to that population size, to Dr. Ferry's point, then someone could be identified.
The state does say that they're not releasing numbers at that low because of privacy. I forget exactly how they phrase it, but privacy's in there about it.
And so it's that attempt to protect privacy that prevents us from knowing whether that's a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4.
In essence, yes.
Thank you.
I completely agree that I don't think the school board should be deciding whether kids wear masks or not. That's really not our choice. That is a parent choice. However, we're not here to do that.
we're here as a school board to decide what's best for our students, our staff, and keeping the school open as much as we can, providing an education to as many students as we can. So our decision whether, you know, if people think we want to force your kids to wear masks or, you know, allow kids not to wear masks near your, that's not the point. The point is, what do we have to do and what's the decision? And it's not an easy one. Trust me, I go back and forth, and I have a kid in this school with plenty of friends that work here and plenty of their friends. And my decision's gone back and forth about 10 times tonight. And all the emails I've gotten, I get tons of emails from people that say, wear the masks, and I get it. And I get the emails that say, don't. And I have this big other group in the middle that says, I will do whatever it takes to have me in school. And that's, I just want to make sure we can get as many people in school. We don't want to go remote. We don't want to have that again. We don't want these kids to be separate. We want them in school. Do I want my kid wearing a mask in school? No, I don't. But if it means he can go to school every single day for 180 days and get an education, then you know what? If that's what has to happen, it has to happen. And I know people won't like that. But on the flip side, if the numbers are low and there's no reason, and we can play with these numbers, I don't want my kid to have to wear a mask 180 days either. So I go both ways. And that's where my problem comes in. So one of my questions I have for Mark is, and I'm putting you on the spot, Mark, I'm sorry. I mean, so I'm reading this, and I'm reading the reopening plan, and again, it says face masks should be used based on a local assessment of risk, which, and again, Mark, you're no expert, nobody else in this room is either. So everyone's got an opinion, and we all know what opinions are worth. We all have one. So again, we're all riding by the seat of our pants to try to figure out what the right decision is here. All of us. I see every single side to the story. Again, face mask use should be based on a local assessment of risk, which is what you're doing with the best data that you have, Mark, which we can't ask you to be a statistician and go through this and figure things out. Face masks in outdoor locations are generally no longer recommended. Okay, so again, we talked about that. Kids don't have to wear them outside. So we're talking about, again, local assessment of risk inside. When levels are low, schools can choose to remove the face masks indoors. So if we go with this plan, and you're just basically saying right now that number is high and it's substantial, we would be starting with face masks. Again, if that number drops before August 30th, right, we would not be starting with face masks. We're basically trying to mitigate the risk here of if the numbers are high and if it seems like we have that, and I don't want to say explosion, but if we have a lot of active cases, to be smart and be safe. But once we see that we drop below that, then go to optional, correct? And you wouldn't have to be coming back to the school board for that because this plan allows for that. Am I correct in that?
I believe that's a correct, interpretation of this. If you read this chart the way that the state has produced it, if the level drops below substantial and you fall into the moderate column, then face masks are optional, as long as we have sporadic cases without facility transmission. Now, last year, we had very few cases with facility transmission in the schools. We actually had, could not definitively say that we had facility transmission, so we'd be in probably that first top row. And as long as we drop below substantial, if we are in the category of moderate, if you're reading this chart, then yes, face masks would be optional.
So again, so if we had a meeting and we said, okay, we're going to go with this, and we're insubstantial, and we say, not because of this chart says face masks are required inside the buildings now. Again, next Tuesday, before we have our next meeting, those numbers change. You're shifting that. It's not, it doesn't have to come back to us every time, so it's not like every board meeting we're going to have to address
No, I
this.
think what they're looking for is a motion from the board to approve this decision matrix for indoor
Right,
face masks.
but that's my-
That's what you're looking for, are you not,
But-
Dr. Cochran?
Yes.
Yeah, and the data is, the data I can share the data with you every day if you'd like. So on a daily basis, we know where we're at with the minimal, moderate, substantial, those numbers. The state identifying Rockingham County as, minimal, moderate, substantial.
So part of the discussion we had was really around given the unknowns, given the amount of changes, if we decrease our risk mitigation and bring more kids back in, does it make sense to spend a relatively small number of weeks to see what the pattern is? We know the pattern last year was successful in terms of spread within the schools. This year is very different. We've gone from pretty much 6 feet to striving for 3 feet with a more transmissible virus, and hence the want to be, the desire to be playing it on the safe side at the start of the school year, because what we don't want, to Kristen's point, is to go back to hybrid or to go back to remote. We feel that that's a lose-lose, and we felt that putting forth a model that would allow us to have a few weeks to monitor, compare what's happening in our school district to similar districts in South Central would give us a good basis. It would also allow us to test out and look at matrix, the statistics and the application of the matrix model.
So now if I can follow on what Sean was saying, which I agree with you, Sean. I mean, we're all sitting in here tonight, we don't have masks on. I have a hypocritical view of all of a sudden saying we can all be here, we have a group without masks, with masks, and we're all coexisting. And then all of a sudden saying, all right, kids, you have to come back and you have to wear masks. But then again, there's a whole bunch of kids, and I will say probably there's a giant group of here in here that are vaccinated. So there's a different mix here than what you're going to have in the elementary schools and the middle school and I mean, all the schools. But I also look at this matrix and I look at what it is, and I completely hear what you're saying, Sean. Like, where does this number come from? I mean, if it's the whole county and we have Portsmouth or one area that's got this problem, why are we letting it dictate what Timberlane does? So I do have, I mean, I look at this matrix school starting in before our next meeting. I think it's a responsible matrix. I realize some people will like it and some people won't. I also know that it will bring challenges with lunch in any which way we do this. But is there a way, and is this an open-minded thing, that if we go down this road and we approve this plan now, and we're seeing that our numbers, our Timberlane numbers are really good, and we're not having issues here, but we see that number is hot, or we're in the substantial rates, if you follow me here. We're in the substantial rate county-wise, but Timberlane district is doing really good, and we're not seeing cases. Is there an openness to come back and look at this? To say, let's shift that number, like maybe, okay, so this is saying this percentage, but maybe we raise it a little to allow a little more flexibility on our part. And is there a little more flexibility within our schools, as I believe somebody said, that if we have rooms, you know, people are in a pack or in an area where they can spread out beyond that, even 3-6 feet or whatnot, are they allowed to then take off their mask if they have that ability?
Those were exactly the points that the group that we pulled together had in terms of the conversation. We would love to have the comparable data at the town level. The problem becomes it isn't available, and all of the issues that you brought up in terms of trying to maintain those balances are exactly all the conversations, points that you made and points that Sean made were exactly where we were at the table. Mr. Finnegan was there, Chris, Mark, and it's where those data points and the trends meet that we find ourselves at a point where we don't have a good metric for what we think is the most important thing that we'd like to measure. And so this is a compromise in some sense, and hence the suggestion that we try this and see exactly as Kristen pointed out, what's the first 3 weeks look like? We know our risk mitigation is way down, but if our cases haven't changed, that really informs how we would, be moving forward. Can we reduce masks, and under what situations can we reduce masks? And it's going to be a little bit of a dance as numbers go up and down. How do we respond? How do we try to find that sweet spot? Right? Knowing that if we go too wrong in one way, kids don't have as good an experience in school. We go too wrong the other way, kids are in school, either because they're ill or because school is remote. And so that's why the dilemma. We can't find the perfect solution. There is none. and it's a matter of what are the biggest risks, how do we mitigate the biggest risks possible, and how do we do it in a way that works for the safety of students, of all the people who work in the schools, who put in all this time in this last year to make sure our students got the best education that we had. I think our teachers would argue that learning in person is better than remote learning. Yeah, strong nod heads, or head nods rather. And that we're supportive of trying to educate every child to the highest level that we can. And it is going to be difficult, and there is no right decision, because the decision that's right this week might not be the best decision the next week, but we need a consistent basis. We can't change our metrics, you know, when the situation changes a bit. So that's a difficulty. This, I think, is a compromise. It's a relatively short-term compromise to try and get enough data and still keep students safe, that we can then decide whether we can move one way or the other, and how do we continue to monitor so that we know that we're keeping in the right lane. And we don't have the data we like, but we are willing to put in the time and the effort and the energy to do that, to try and continue to monitor and continue to compare our status with other district status and see what's working. And we talk with other districts all the time about what's working and what's not. What we did find out is that, as of this morning, multiple districts that were using plexiglass have basically said, done, not using it anymore. That it's problematic, and they're essentially throwing it out. So as we know more, you know, and we work with our colleagues in other districts, we hope to be able to find a path that will keep us in the best place possible as the conditions in the school and in the towns may change. So that's kind of where we are. We know we're in a lose-lose situation, but we have great people who are trying to do the very best thing every day. I wish I had a perfect answer for you.
Made for people that, you know, have special needs, that would not be able to wear a mask. And, you know, we put this in a place and it becomes mandatory.
Yeah.
Is there any exceptions policies?
Yes, there are. Students, if they have a condition that's consistent with any ADA condition, medical recommendation that they not be required to wear masks, we need to honor that.
We apparently didn't do that last year, so is it going to be the same?
I'm sorry?
Is it going to be, I know you're not here, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess I am. So those same you know, the exceptions were valid last year for, I would say, a vast majority of people. There was no exceptions, period.
I can't speak
No,
to
I know you can't.
what happened. I can tell you that my interpretation, when I was in that role to make that decision in another district, the decision that was made with full legal counsel was absolutely that those exemptions are required to be allowed.
Apparently, we didn't follow the same legal premises.
Apparently not.
Brian, then Kelly, no, actually, I'm sorry, Kelly said her hand up for a long time, then Barbara, then Brian.
I was just going to say to Kristen's question about whether we can be flexible, the footnote that Sean mentioned earlier on the DPHS matrix says exceptions can be made for classrooms or schools that have a high vaccination rate, or where other prevention measures it's cut off, but I assume means can be put in place, which I would think meant if we're doing social distancing.
Yes.
I apologize for that.
No worries.
No,
I can figure it out.
The last of the wording says be strictly implemented.
Okay. Do you feel like, though, to Kristen's point, that if we're able to do that and our specific cases are low, that we would kind of fall into that exception, possibly, not all the time?
Well, the other prevention measures, you know, being 6 foot distancing, we cannot fall into 6 foot distancing. I mean, there are places where we obviously can. There's going to be classrooms where it's a small enough class population in a big enough room where we might be able to, but it's not going to be, you know, across the board everywhere.
In those situations where students need that exemption, you look to employ other mitigation strategies to protect staff, to protect their peers, and to protect those students themselves.
Barbara, then Brian.
So, two things. Number one is the indoor mask recommendation from the DHHS is in line with the statements made by Dartmouth Hitchcock and Exeter Health, correct? I'm just gonna. So that the matrix is in line and agrees with what we see.
Is that a question or is that a statement?
I was just making sure that that's an accurate statement.
I took a quick look and it looked comparable, relatively comparable to me. Mark, have you seen that?
I believe both of them are when it's substantial, we should be wearing masks. And while he's looking at that, my other question is, what's the communication going to look like when we switch between substantial and optional, masks required and masks optional, or the other way around? How do you communicate that to parents and when?
We haven't troubleshooted the exact process yet. I think because Mr. Peterson is able to give us data on a daily basis, we typically are talking multiple times a day about the data, what the trends are, where we're going. And if we're looking like we will have a potential decision point one way or the other in a short period of time, then we essentially pull together and meet, look at those trends, talk to local public health folks, talk to other people at the state, looking at trends, conversing with other districts to see if they're seeing the same set of patterns that we are, those sorts of things. So we try to make as much lead time so that we can give some notice to parents. One of the most difficult things to do is to pivot, and the folks here tonight, I'm sure, at times last year were tremendously frustrated by having to go from we're in this model to another model. It's disruptive to kids, it's disruptive to families, parents. It can, it is a major hassle and problem on its own. So in trying to develop the metrics, that's one of the things we have to try and keep in the back of our mind. How can we have a metric that gives us what we want, but isn't jerking parents and families around in a way that's very disruptive? And like I say, finding that spot is something we're working on.
We have no other models this year. We're in school and that's it. So it's just a matter of masks or no masks. That's the whole thing. So, that again makes the decision that much more difficult because we want every child that we can get in these doors. And we have no alternative, and there's nothing. And the last thing you want to do is have some sort of something happen and have an outbreak where we have to quarantine because now, how do we do that? Because we're not offering remote, and how do we fluctuate back and forth? And that's where, again, the problems come in. It's not so much about wear a mask or not wear a mask or decide for each of your children. It's about what do we do to make sure that our schools are staying open and we can provide an education to everyone, whether they choose a mask or not.
And that's the problem. Mr. O'Neill's concerns and criticisms are absolutely valid. And his points and your points are equally valid. And the problem is we don't have a quick resolution to that, which is why the default position was take some time, take a few weeks,
All right,
see
so
what happens.
you're looking, just to clarify this, you're looking for the board, the last vote of the board was that masks are optional. You're asking the board to make masks required for the first 3 weeks of school and to approve this?
No, it's basically to follow the matrix.
So you're not looking for us to approve you're looking for the board to take action to approve the use of this matrix with regards to indoor masks.
And one of the things that may happen is that we end up, because of the county rate being universal, and masks would be required, but at the same point in time, we will get an opportunity to see what's happening in other places where masks are optional. And depending on that data might be compelling to say this is something we should really look at.
And that's, I had the chance to see Mark today, and I was shocked. I honestly didn't believe I hadn't read through all the packet and all the information, and when he told me, no, we're in that substantial, because I thought if we did this plan, we're okay, we're mask optional, and if things got worse, but he's telling me, no, we're already in that by this chart, in that worse, so we are substantial, so we would be starting
Yeah,
with masks
we're almost
currently.
double
Right.
the substantial at this point in time.
Which is why I echo and agree with what Sean said, that it's almost like this number seems very restrictive, but I 100% agree with what you're saying, Dr. Cochran, in that we need to start somewhere and see what's happening and what's going on. And if this is what's being recommended, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. I don't know. Again, I watch Fox News, I see CNN, I see it all. I different views on everything. I don't have the ability to make this decision. I don't. I'm not an expert. The only decision I have is to figure out how to keep the schools open, and this seems like a reasonable compromise to start and to move forward, and to see where we go with the understanding. I mean, I clearly like to, we'd all like to see it all go away and be back to normal, but what is normal anymore? So knowing that we have movement in this chart is, it would be approving this chart to be looked at and discussed and see where we go. And that's where I'm leaning.
Kelly, then.
Can we please call him Brian then?
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
He's been.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, Kelly.
I don't know if, I'm sure the superintendent and the assistant superintendent know this, but we've been in school all week. Right? I don't know if my fellow board members know that.
Who's been in school all week?
Kindergarten, Maxim Academy. Danville.
They've been tested.
They've been in school all week. With no masks. Thank you. That's correct. Everything okay? And then when I hear these words about this is a good compromise, a compromise to me is optional mask. I'm not following this compromise.
Sheila.
Lucy, could you answer that, please, and tell me why they were in school this week?
So all of our schools who have kindergarten did have a transition camp this week. I think the largest camp was about 30 kids.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, that's.
Go ahead. Kelly, did you have a question? Comment?
So I'm still confused on how often we're going to be making the decision between mask optional and mask required. And I understand you may not know that yet, but so I'm hearing 3 weeks, starting with for the first 3 weeks of school, and I'm also hearing that we can review the information daily. So I think maybe part of your decision has to be, you know, how often are we going to make this decision, and when are we going to communicate that to parents? Because based on this, if we were to approve this executive summary, this doesn't say starting the school year with 3 weeks of mask required. It just says following the matrix, which may change before school begins. Correct?
I'm sorry.
The rate may change, but I see what you're saying is if we're going to approve this, we should approve how often it's revisited.
Yeah,
is what you're
exactly.
asking.
Yeah,
Which
right.
to me
To be able to effectively communicate to parents when things change, all that. Yeah.
would be, I would think, at least on a weekly basis. How often were you? I know the remote hybrid in person was. We tried to give parents lead. How often were you reevaluating that and then moving to another?
Well, the data that determines the level of community transmission is produced every night. Well,
right.
Monday through Friday night at it used to be about 8 o'clock. Now I think they backed down to about 6 p.m. If we knew on say a Tuesday night at 6 p.m. that the level had dropped from substantial to moderate, in theory we could, I believe that we could, send an alert now out to families and say tomorrow, Wednesday, the level's back at moderate, masks are optional. I believe that we could do it that way. I don't want to speak for Dr. Cochran or Mr. Kellen, but I believe that could be a way to communicate.
If we get the information by 6, then between Mr. Peterson and Mr. Henderson, we can get that message out to all employees and all parents through the school messenger system.
The only problem I see with that system is that every time you do that, you're gonna need to remind parents that buses are mandatory. They're mandatory. It's not an optional for the buses. So that's gonna have to be reiterated every single time.
Yep. Good point.
So then, just to be clear, myself, that means that we're not saying we're starting this academic year with the first 3 weeks of masks. We're saying we're gonna wait till the day before school begins and let parents know whether masks will be optional on day 1 or not. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, I want to make sure that
But
I'm clear.
if we're basing it on
if the data the day before the start of school is as it is now, we would say mask required. Mask required. But that would go for 3 weeks and then we'd reassess. I think 3 weeks is enough time.
Well, 3 weeks to reassess what, because that's going back.
We're saying that we're gonna watch the data and do it daily, but here's 3 weeks to reassess.
What we're assessing is the data from the other districts, what's happening in other districts.
But again, those are two different, and I'm trying to get this clarity because we're trying to vote on whether or not we're going to follow this New Hampshire DPHS recommendation. That's not based on a 3-week, let's see what happens. That's based on data. So if you're looking to do, you're asking the board for two different things then. If you're asking for masks for 3 weeks, that in my mind is one motion. If you're asking the board to approve, to allow the district to use this matrix, that's a different motion. And I need you to make clear what it is that I'm asking the board to vote on again.
Basically, it would be to implement that matrix and those measures for a 3-week period, which, given that we're right now almost double the threshold, would mean that it's highly likely that we would spend the entire 3 weeks in
all right, so
masks.
you're asking to implement this for 3 weeks, but the board meets on a bi-weekly basis, so.
Let's make it 4.
So it would basically be to implement, no.
The matrix.
Look, it wouldn't be 4 because the way we start school. So you're basically saying to implement this matrix, which is the New Hampshire DPHS as of August 11th.
Right.
So if they come out with another one August 30th, we're sticking with the August 11th recommendation. I mean, I don't want to. That's my other question. Are we blanketly saying whatever New Hampshire DPS says, which, because that could change, so we would have to say it based on the August, but this is the August 11th recommendation.
Fair question.
So I want
and we don't know.
So then our next meeting, we meet on September 2nd, which is only 4 days into school, and then September 16th. So the understanding is we could make a motion whether or not to approve this matrix based on the New Hampshire DPHS August 11th recommendation, with the understanding that we're going to review it on our meeting on September 16th and look at all numbers, which I would be interested, as Mr. O'Neill has brought up, the different numbers and looking at, do we shift that? I mean, are the numbers, or based on what other schools are happening, or what we see in our own school. If our school is looking like we're working okay and we're doing this and or if all of a sudden we see a spike, that might change something, but I'd like to know that we're going to revisit this and look at it and see what's happening as your state, based on that.
That absolutely is the intent.
So
But daily follow-ups.
We would be the control situation.
Would you like to
Go
make
mask
a
for mask.
motion then, Kristen?
Sure. Let's start all over again here. So, I will make a motion that we approve the school reopening plan based on the New Hampshire DPHS, New Hampshire DOE recommendation as presented on August 11th, 2021, with the terms and statements as contained in there, with the understanding that it will be reviewed on a daily basis, and if the levels change to substantiate a change one way or the other, that will be communicated with the parents. So we are not committing to one thing right now, we're just committing to follow this matrix and determine whether it's a mask required or mask not required day. And it will be reviewed on September 16th, and at which time, all the data available to us, including data from our own school, neighboring schools and communities, as well as the county numbers, and whether or not that still continues to apply to us, or we want to make adjustments, will be discussed at that time.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion, comment?
The worst case scenario is it's not enough time, in which case we would go to the next school board meeting.
And we could decide that at the
Right.
next meeting.
But if the data is clear by that time, then we would have a recommendation.
Let's hope the numbers don't drop and it's not an issue anymore. We don't have to worry about it, right? Let's just hope.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Discussion again.
Yeah, so just the discussion is, the thing that we're reevaluating at the next meeting is the metrics. And in between, the decision to go without a mask can happen if the numbers drop.
It can go any which way based on what.
So this is about keeping these metrics until the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Any
Not the
further
next meeting,
discussion?
September 16th.
September 16th, not the next meeting. The next meeting is September 2nd. That's not going to give us enough time. Steve?
So the challenge, I think, with waiting 3 or 4 weeks or whatever we talked about is that, Mr. Peterson, if I'm not mistaken, the transmission or the metrics that we're using is active cases over, or whatever the term is, over 14 days, correct?
See if I can still remember it.
Yeah, sorry.
That's right. New cases, the rate of new cases in, no, I lost it.
But it's 14.
It doesn't say like over, it just says last 14 days.
Right, so it's average of essentially 14 days. So what I would recommend is that if we're meeting on a bi-weekly basis as a school board, that we revisit this each and every school board meeting, because we will have 14-day data.
But we don't need to, because Mark's going to be doing it daily. We're just looking at deciding whether this matrix on September 16th is what we still want to follow, or if we want to shift it or play with it and allow liberties or more restrictions.
Yeah, so the challenge that I have with that is that these numbers can fluctuate up and down, right? I mean, we could be in green one day, in red in the next day, and green in the next day, and red. And to me, that's not good for parents, that's not good for kids to have to fluctuate back and forth like this. You know, that to me creates a little more instability, and I think I don't know that I support reviewing this on a day-to-day basis and making determinations based on what it is that day.
Well, I think Mark also said they would follow the trends. Did you say that, or did Dr. Cochran say that? I'm sorry.
I didn't speak to going with trends. You know, I would just say if we're following this, you know, we could make that determination however, in whatever time period we want, but I can get that data, you know, Monday through Friday nights.
Right.
To make a decision based upon this, whether it's substantial, moderate, or minimal. You know, you could sort of watch the trends and see what it's doing, and the trend right now is it's climbing. You know, so the trend is it's climbing, and it's not going to just magically drop to moderate overnight. But you know, if you're right there on the cusp of it, you know, if it's at 101 one day, it could drop to 99 and then go back up. You know, in that regard.
I think that's a valid point, because quite honestly, if it goes from 101 to 99, it's not a significant change statistically. And I wouldn't think that we would actually make a change, but we would be, you know, informing parents of where we are, what the trend is. You know, please be aware that we're close to the point. But I can't see us flipping the switch from a 101 to a 99.
Well,
For exactly that reason. It's so
what I would
unpredictable for
suggest
parents.
then, Steve, is to amend the motion and have some sort of.
So that's, I'm confused.
Could I just say that last year, Mr. Peterson gave us the numbers every Thursday, and once a week we evaluated, right? Could we just do it weekly?
Those
But
numbers.
I think that's up to them to decide. I mean, they're gonna know when they're comfortable with the number and when they're gonna do that. And I think the benefit we have this year is we're not talking about going hybrid, remote, this or that. I mean, it really is mask on, mask, I mean, right, kids should always bring a mask just to be on the safe side, you know, but I mean, if they come to school that day and we're like, hey, mask's optional, well then mask's optional. I mean, they don't.
Yeah, I guess.
It's just letting the parents know, and I mean, I get the younger kids, the older kids are gonna get it.
Yeah.
The younger kids, it might be a little difficult, but they might just be like, yay, I got it, it's like an extra recess.
No,
No,
Kristen, I totally agree. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that, but I think if we're approving this as it is, right, by the nature of that, if we hit 99, then we're saying no masks. If we hit 101, then we're saying masks. That's a problem. I don't know that we can continue to fluctuate like that. One day masks, one day no masks, one day masks, one day no masks.
You want a variable rate in there.
There's too much variable.
No, you don't want a variable rate. You want to base it, say, on a 5-day average.
Yeah.
Sure.
And my point was, we can't do that. We can't mess up parents' schedules and lives,
So I think that was, yeah.
so that if there's a trend that's going down, that's great. But we can't just flip back and forth above and below 100 and expect parents, to be able to respond in those sorts of timelines with all of the challenges that are in a normal day, let alone in COVID.
What you're looking for is, it's called hysteresis. And what you're looking to do as the trend comes down, if it's the 100 is at the point, as you're coming down, it gets down to 99, before it, and if it oscillates around that number, you have to go back the other way, you have to have another higher threshold, like 105, that kind of thing. That can be easily done, but yeah, I'll let you guys.
Or I like the idea of what's the 4 or 5 day rate, because then you're not going to see. You're typically not going to see.
What you're doing,
change.
it's the jitter
Right.
that you're talking about. No matter how you filter it on out, it's still got some jitter on it. And it's hysteresis that fixes that
But
problem.
if our numbers are good in that first 3 or 4 weeks, and you're jittering above and below, I think we would default to the we're okay. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be, if it went above, below, and what we find out is we don't see any significant difference in what's happening at the school, then I think you say anything within this band kind of works.
Well, that's kind of what I'm looking at, that it's
Yeah.
discretion between them and Mark and the group to decide when that, when they're at that comfort level, as this chart kind of says, you can do, it's based on your risks in your school. I mean, that was, local assessment of risk. So if we're, going back and forth, I mean, I agree, you're not gonna mask on, mask off, mask off. If you're at that level, I think you have to be at a comfortable level one way or the other to decide. So if we're in a mask optional and we suddenly start creeping up, you don't suddenly jump into we need masks tonight. You have to wait until that level gets to a point to say, okay, we're in this 4 or 5 day trend of doing this. And that's kind of what I was hinting at with the trends before. But again, that's not our job. That's theirs. We pay them the bucks for this.
Just let's be clear, we don't want this to be our job.
But here's
kind of put in
the
a situation where
Mark
we
has
have to
something
try
else
and do
to
what's
say.
best.
Without-
for
Sorry,
community
Mark.
development.
without
Steve, let Mark go, and we'll have your comment.
If I can just add some historical perspective to this. October 22nd, 2020, that rate that we're talking about was at 90.6. It went to 95.4, then 100.3, then it dropped down to 99.6, then back up to 104 October 27th. It didn't drop back down again, so there was one flutter between October 25th to 26th to 27th. That was the only time that metric ever fluttered. And then so it stayed above 100 until May 28th, 2021, when it dropped down to 94.9. Then it continued dropping. And then July 30th, 2021, it was at 64.2. Then the next data point that I got from the state was August 6th, and it was at 123.3. So there's in the historical numbers from the state, there was only that one flutter. I understand that it can happen, and it happened once, and there's ways to correct it. I just wanted to add that historical perspective to it.
Steve?
I think we just need to spell it out. I think the motion on the table right now is that we approve this as it's constituted. I think we have to spell this out a little bit more, because if, you know, if I'm a parent of a student that I don't want to wear a mask, I'm gonna be looking for that threshold, and as soon as I hit the green, I'm gonna want my kid without a mask. And we're gonna get calls, and we're gonna hear about that, right? But what I'm saying, but we need to have a plan in place to say, this is what we're doing over a period of time. If we're looking at this over a 5-day period, 1-week period, we have to be below a threshold, then we need to spell that out, I think.
I think that we had this discussion last year about the remote versus hybrid versus in person, and at some point last year, we actually did leave it up to the discretion of the administration as to when to make that call. I don't think we as a board should be making that particular call. I think this motion should allow the administration to use this as the basis for their decision making, but give them some ability to make a determination based on the senior staff as to which way they're going to go without a hard and fast if you go from 101 to 99. So I think this discussion could be the basis for informing the administration based on which way the vote goes, how they should approach this. I don't,
So
Steve, I understand what you're saying, but it gets to be.
If it passes, the board would want us to operationalize a process that would be consistent over time.
Correct. Because I don't think we're gonna be able to hash it out here.
Now you're just trying to cheer us up.
Unless we have a status.
But no, I think that makes sense. It gives as much continuity as possible and allows us some time to learn from other people and tries to keep everybody safe at the same time.
I mean, this
It's
plan
an
has
impossible goal, I
flexibility
know
in it,
that.
and that's, you know.
Well, the plan does, but
The plan does the matrix stuff,
the
right?
matrix stuff.
But that's kind of my point with, again, bring it back on the 16th and let's look at it as in totality at that point based on what we know, but allowing them the flexibility until that time. So, and it's not, you know, it's up to the administration to decide. If the state masks are required that day, then they're required. If they're not, they're not. That's not the school board decision. That's the administration decision based on what you see.
All right, so I'd like to call a question on that motion, or I'd like to take a vote on that motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, Steve, 5, 6, 7, opposed, 2. Motion passes 7-2. Moving on, board members, in your packet, you have an athletics update. Are there any questions with regards to that? I don't know if Mr. Fantasia is here or not.
No, it's the same as last year. At
It
the end of last year.
is the same, yes.
Very, very similar. I spoke to Mr. Fantasia today. Essentially, we'll be in the same situation where different schools are in different places in terms of how they're handling the risk mitigation, and what the agreement that the NHIA members, the school districts themselves, have come to is that the visiting team, essentially, if there's a disagreement, if the home team is requiring masks of their players, that we would adopt the safety protocols of the home team if they're more stringent than ours. So that's essentially what we did from mid-year last year on.
No, it's
No.
just informational. Okay, moving on to the facilities update. Mr. Inglesby has provided an update. Looks like we have quite a bit of work being done. I do think that we might want to discuss.
In the audience, if you
Yes,
have
I
any
know.
questions.
I think we will want you to come up because I'd like to join this with the performance contract. And while you're coming up, at the last meeting, we were looking to waive policy to go, to not go out to bid for Dude Solutions, which was something from School Dude to look at our performance or preventive maintenance and look at all our systems. The Maria and Carl have worked diligently, and also Chris Kellen brought this idea to us regarding a performance contract, which you'll see later on is informational in the packet. So, Carl, can you just explain briefly to the board what we're looking at here in terms of a performance contract, and this will also inform the Capital Improvement Plan Committee, which will be meeting September 8th, as to how we proceed with major projects. So go ahead, Carl.
So performance contracting is a way to you hire a company that comes in and does an audit of all your energy usage and the equipment that uses that energy, and then they come back with recommendations that will save you energy to the point where the energy savings would pay for the project. We're at a unique opportunity where we can use that plus ESSER funds and share those together to get even more done for no tax or little to no tax implications to the district. It's been around for a few years. We were doing it in Somersworth in phases. We started with a small project at one building where we just got rid of all the unit ventilators and got new lighting, paid for new boilers, new roofs, and added that to a project that was already going on for a renovation of the front office area. So with no additional cost. So when we realized the energies we were saving, they said they were going to save a certain amount of money. We actually saved more than that. The district was so involved with it that we decided to do the entire rest of the district, and we went through all 5 buildings and upgraded everything at no additional cost to the district. It's just it's a wonderful opportunity to get things done without impacting the tax burden.
Sure. So do we have to enter into a contract with them?
Absolutely. And so the contract will actually state that if we do not make our energy savings goals that they projected, they will actually make up the difference in the cost. That's one of the beautiful things. There's no risk of us having to pay more than that.
So we're not looking to enter into a performance contract now. What Carl's doing is developing an RFP to have a company come in and do the assessment to show where these savings would be and what the cost would be. And I know Chris Kellen did something similar over in Derry, and it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he gave me the date on it, was about a $40 million project over the course of several years, wasn't it?
I forget the exact amount, but yeah, it was over several years, and it was basically cost neutral in the end.
It was cost neutral because of the savings that were realized in energy savings. So this company comes in and lays this all out, and
They did everything from, I never forget the names of all these things, I apologize, but, the little things that go in the plug that shut whatever's plugged into it off.
Energy misers.
Yeah, the energy, well, they had a specific name. They changed all the LED lights. I know that's something that's been, all the lights over to LED. That's something that's been happening here already. The boilers, the furnaces, the HVAC systems, you name it, anything that uses any kind of energy, windows, walls,
insulation,
insulation,
building envelopes,
ceiling tiles, looked at every aspect of energy and made recommendations and made changes and upgraded our entire facilities based on those recommendations that would result in a cost saving over a period of time that resulted in cost neutrality as far as our energy expenses compared to that of the investment into the facilities themselves.
And do we know how much it is to hire this company to come in?
Well, they get a percentage of the whole project, just like any other construction management company would do.
I think the question is more the RFP to do the initial evaluation.
So there's different models out there. Larger companies that come in with 50, 60 people and spend a month here doing the audits, they typically would ask that if we do not move forward with the project, that they receive compensation. There are companies out there that do not as detailed of an audit. However, they stand by their audit just like they would if they sent 50 people in there, and they don't charge if we decide not to move forward. I don't see us not moving forward, so I don't think it's a problem or something that we'd have to worry about.
So there's nothing you need us to do with this?
No,
Not
no,
at
we're
this
just bringing it
Okay.
forward right now, so you understand that there is an RFP going out to have an evaluation done. If this, once the RFP comes through and there's an evaluation, there will be a whole presentation that will take quite some time for the board to review, because this would actually require us to go out for a bond, would it not?
Possibly.
Possibly go out for a bond, possibly not.
We might do a leasing option, and that might be a better option at this point. There's multiple ways to fund it that we'd have to discuss further with the business manager. She's actually been in contact through her New Hampshire TRSB meeting that with other districts that are doing it, so we're communicating, trying to figure out how best to move forward with it.
So this is just informational at this point, but it will be something that will be coming forward as we progress through the budget year. It's going to inform our capital improvement projects. Are there any questions on the facilities update?
Yeah, somewhere in there, I think you said there's going to be substantial upgrades over the next couple of years.
Yes. This is what we're talking about, is the performance contract. We're going to be looking at ways to get a lot of things done over the next few years. One of the things I just brought forward, and I'd like to ask you guys, in regards, if we start doing these projects, it might be prudent to save the modulars and not remove them, so in case we need the added space or have to clear out a section of the buildings to move students into, that might be an option to keep those. It's just throwing it out there, it's just something to peruse. I know we want to get rid of them. I did also find out that it will cost us nothing to separate the power and the utilities, as we have everybody on staff that can do that. So the modulars could be gotten away for zero cost.
Thank you for bringing this forward.
You're welcome.
Could I hand out some kudos to Carl and Maria for reaching out to the DOE and bringing in their grant person to try and maximize every penny that we can in the ESSER grant funds that we're getting. We picked their brain for 3 or 4 hours and really, I think, changed some of the ways that we were looking at using our money. And it was just a huge, a great step on their part to get firsthand information about what we can and can't do and how we can and cannot maximize the stuff we're trying to do. So thank you for doing that. It was a fabulous 4-hour meeting. Thank you. If there is such a thing.
All right, any other questions, Carl? If not, we'll move on. We'll bring Maria down here. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, Carl, is just one thing that I noticed to see anyone coming in is that, I know this parking lot's been resurfaced out here the last couple of years. I'm starting to see, grass growing up in the cracks. We probably want to look into a crack sealing program and keep that under wraps, because as we know, as winter comes, it just makes the problem worse.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I'm going to be bringing forward, and then as I get in here a little more, I've got many things on my projects, and the first thing is getting this performance contract going.
You've been doing a great job of bringing all this stuff forward. It's stuff that we've all believed that's existed. It just wasn't coming to this desk, this table.
Yes, absolutely. It will all be in front of you at some point, and we'll have lots of discussions over the years. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Carl.
The next item on the agenda is the final budget and the anticipated surplus for the 2021 year. I had talked to Maria about this in advance. Maria, you probably want to come down there. I would anticipate there'll be questions. The unassigned fund balance for FY 2021 was $3.9 million, roughly. Last year we retained $500,000. If we don't renew that retention, that will go back to the voters, but the recommendation would be to hold that back and then return back $3.4 million from this available fund balance. We are allowed by RSA to withhold much, much more than that, up to about 1.2 million. We typically don't do that. I do want to point out, because I did have a discussion with Maria about this, and I asked her to include some unexpected additional revenue and savings that we saw in the budget that contributed to the surplus. So at the bottom of this page, you'll see some of those benefits that we may or may not realize moving forward. For instance, we had a $550,000 savings in transportation last year. That was due to the fact that we weren't running every bus, and we weren't doing extracurricular activities and things like that. So I would not anticipate we would see that as high. There was a $450,000 health trust refund, which was basically unanticipated revenue. So while it is a relatively robust surplus number, I think there are reasons that occurred due to revenue that we were not anticipating. So I'll open up the floor for questions. Sean?
One is, it's not a question, it's basically a statement. I want to say, Maria, you've done an awesome job. This kind of report, I've been looking for, I don't know, 10 plus years. Thank you so much for giving us the detail that is needed to make these decisions appropriately. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also wanted to know that I included the first page. I know some of you are new in the board, and I'm new to this government accounting too, so I thought it was helpful just to let you know what is what, and then I included also the our policy on retained fund balance, so you guys can know what we're talking about.
So the board will be I'm looking for a motion to renew the fund balance retention amount of $500,000.
So made.
Sean? Go ahead. Barbara makes a motion, Sean seconds. All in favor?
Can I just ask?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, hold on. So again, 500 is the amount that we normally do, but we've had this larger influx of savings that we didn't expect, and I'm seeing that the maximum that we could retain is the 1.2. Is there, under the circumstances where we got more back from transportation and whatnot that we didn't expect, are we better off upping this number this year for that same reason? We have that influx that we're not going to ever see again. You know, are we better off to take a large, if we could, we're doing 500, but we can do up to 1.2. Are we?
But I think the problem with that, though, and Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, in order to spend that, that's really an emergency sort of fund. We can't just spend that. I guess we can save it till next year.
I'm just looking at any possibility that come up with HVAC or anything else with all the COVID stuff. Is there some sort of an emergency? I mean, if we lose something, correct?
You can spend it, but you have to hold you actually have to hold a series of meetings. Yeah.
I get that. I'm just like I said, worst case scenario just goes back, right?
In a subsequent year.
Right. So I'm just we have an unknown year ahead of us, just like we just had last year. And if we have a major issue, it'd be nice to know that we could do something with it, is all I'm saying. Where we had, it's not like we have a larger surplus than normal, so that's, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if what everyone's, that's why, something to think about.
Marie, do you know what the balance is in the capital reserve fund that's held by the trustee of trust funds? Sorry, didn't mean to put you on spot.
I will have to look. No, I don't know from the top of my head. I have to look, but I can definitely email you tomorrow.
I know we spent some out of that, but I could be wrong, but I think it's somewhere the order of 700,000 to 800,000, and it might be even a little higher than that.
Kim, don't you have to spend all your money in your budget first before you can go to that?
Yes, that's why it's an emergency fund. Yeah, the retained fund balance only can be spent.
That's retention fund. I'm not talking about that.
I'm trying to address Kristen's point. You can't get to that money until you spend all your money.
Right, you can't.
Never happened. I don't think it's ever happened.
So you're against upping. You're
I'm against it. I'm just saying, I don't think it'd be great if you could get to it, but you have to spend all your money before you go to that, and I don't think we've had that issue. That's all I'm saying.
He's trying to figure out how we would ever get there.
Yeah, right.
I agree.
Right.
But you can't get free money from Papa Joe.
none of us know what the heck's gonna happen and what funding we're gonna get or not get, or how something might change,
Well,
the way things have been going.
We know our adequacy aid is down 500,000 this year.
So, I mean, Brian, we always have a surplus, and I get what you're saying, but.
And no
Again,
matter
we're
who's
just
in the
having
White
a
House.
discussion, I'm comfortable with the 500
I'm just saying,
plus,
if
so.
something emergency happens, you will get the money. You'll get all kinds of, that's what we've seen happen.
Oh.
The feds historically stepped in and everything.
Then keep
That
it at
was the White
500
House.
instead of
That's what I've seen in my lifetime.
It's okay, if you're
That's
comfortable
fine.
with that, then
I'm
that's.
not believing.
All right, so there's a motion and a second on the floor to retain $500,000 from the unassigned, the spendable fund balance. All in favor? 9-0. Thank you.
so the rest would be returned?
Yes.
Thank you.
The towns, I think, have all input their data, so once this goes in, we'll
I just got an email at 6:02 tonight that the DRA has approved the appropriations because all the towns send their rate, so.
Wow,
we're
even the states can
probably
do
the first district in, in the state, I think, so.
Great, so this will be used to offset the town tax rates.
Mhm.
And
And
Maria's
again,
also-
these are preliminary numbers. I have to work with the DRA to make them completely final. I mean, they're pretty close, but I have to complete the DOE 25 and submit it before they're completely final. They're preliminary, but.
When you get it done, send it out, we'll sign it.
But yeah, as soon as I complete the DOE will be, the final number will be there, but,
Okay.
I mean, books are closed, so.
And thank you for the end of the year.
Barbara?
Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, can you
Oh,
get a
sorry.
little closer to the
I
mic?
said, just please keep in mind that these are preliminary. We did close the books, but I have not completed the DOE 25. That is due on September 1st. So,
Last time not give you the D.
oh no, they did, yes.
Oh.
Actually, they were the last ones, but they did. So all the towns gave the rates. The DRA emailed me today that our appropriations are approved, and we should be good.
One of the interesting things I did see in the data set that you gave us is for your estimated, ADM and so forth, is that one of the stats that I knew it was going to happen soon, but it's the percentage of the budget is now shifted from a Plastow centric to Sandown centric. So Sandown now is the lion's share, and it's not a big spread above Plastow, but they are the highest donor.
The other thing that I want to remind you is that the preliminary appropriations that the DOE gave us a couple weeks ago, we are losing the additional funding that they gave us last year. That was a one-time fee. It's a little over half a million dollars, so it's a little over $500,000 that we're missing, that we're gonna lose this year as part of our adequacy aid.
Right.
So we have to keep that in mind
So we'll be
as
losing
well.
about $500,000 in adequacy aid this coming year.
Yeah. I don't know, again, it's preliminary. I don't know if in the next couple of weeks they're gonna come up with a modified formula because, well, they're using the free and reduced numbers from 2020 because obviously in 2021, a lot of the schools didn't have the free and reduced applications that we usually get. So they did allow to use the numbers from 2020, which helped us a lot. But that one-time adequacy aid that we got last year, that is going away.
Right.
And it's about $500,000 that we're losing. I don't know if they're gonna come up with another one-time aid, but I just wanted to remind you that that's going on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The chair of the budget committee has also reached out to me. We would like to have a joint meeting of the budget committee and school board at some point in September. I'm working with Maria and the chair of the budget committee, Mr. McCormick, to try to make that happen so the two boards can come together and have a discussion on preliminary budget number for the upcoming year.
And I want to say that I actually appreciate and I thank you for doing that because I think it's easier to all of us to have one one budget instead of having what we had last year that ended up being like 5 different. Obviously, we have to have our default budget, which is by law, we have to have a default budget, which is just what we need regulatorily.
Isn't September early?
It is, but you know what? It's just be proactive instead of being reactive.
Don't complain. Don't complain about having a budget early.
You want to set the groundwork. Have everyone on the
Yes,
same-
I just want to
same
start
page.
having conversations so we all get on the same page, and let's try to have a collective budget where we all are. The other thing is, I prepare a trend report. It's a 9-year trend report, which I'm gonna be sharing with Kim and Todd for this preliminary meeting, so that way we all can see what has happened. And because I think part of it is that as well, you know. I haven't seen the trend here either. So I think all of us understanding where we are and where we have been is extremely helpful. So I am preparing a long 9-year trend report to share with all of you, so we all can have the information that we need. And let's try to make it for the district, right? Yeah.
We usually don't get a preliminary number until the middle of October. That's what I thought was it was early. That's all.
The new CFO.
That I agree with.
Go for it, girl. Go.
Maria and I have also discussed a little bit about the default budget and some of the complexities because of the change in the SAU and how that SAU line is going to be carried forward. So into the default, so we're going to have a conversation with legal about that.
Yes, because obviously that wasn't not part of last year's budget, so.
Yeah. So
we have to ask how to incorporate that.
How to incorporate that into the default budget. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on budget or for Maria? Okay, no, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for your support.
Thank you. Moving on, the next, well, this will be the last item on the agenda. We talked about the performance contract, the fall enrollment class size update. This is required by policy to give us the enrollment update. There are some pressure points here.
Well, I asked for this just kind of because the last one we got was in June. And I was wondering if the numbers have changed drastically. Do you know if...
You mean overall numbers?
Well, seemed to
It
have
doesn't
Northern
look-
Atkinson and seemed to have some issues.
Well, they're approaching their maximum class size. This is per policy. Our policy in terms of maximum class size is well below the state requirements, so we can move to override our policy should we need to, but it looks like we're just kind of sitting right at the cusp on some of these right now.
Those
Right,
worry
Sandy?
me, the three.
Right, they are worse.
They're very worrisome coming off.
Any plan or?
Yeah.
Well, traditionally, our practice in the past, based on the max class size, enrollment size per class, has been to look at when we get to 2. So if we have 2 sections, 2 above would be 1 over, we would come and ask you to waive policy. Once we get to 3 and we're looking at potentially, with a minimum of 2 sections, 2 over, we typically would then come back and either repurpose an open position. If we had any, we do not have open vacant positions right now that we could repurpose. So we would have to look at requesting additional positions if we were to create additional sections at these grade levels. But we do have classroom space. If that's what the will of the board would be, to create additional sections. We then have to look for teachers and create new positions. But
I look at these numbers, and those are, you can't really push the max much closer than what we're at in those 3. And you have a situation where we're coming off a year where so many kids were remote and not in school, and we're also talking about social distancing issues, and we're gonna put 26 kids, or 20, as close as you can get to 26, in a class.
So you're looking at adding 3 more positions?
Honestly, I think we have to. We're talking about trying to keep the kids in school and socialize and distance them and do what needs to be done and make sure that we're keeping as many kids in school as we can. Now we're gonna say we're gonna cram 26 in a classroom. And we're definitely not gonna be able to meet social distancing issues there. And I think we're asking a lot of the teachers in those schools and those grades with those kids coming off a COVID year. Not only that, we may still have situations where kids have to quarantine and go out of school. And now you're gonna have a teacher that's gotta juggle that many kids in that situation. And I think we do need to go and ask for, I mean, what's the reality of getting teachers in here to start the school year in those situations?
Within a week's time, I don't want to say it's not possible. We would do everything we possibly could to, you know. We're still onboarding some people. We onboarded, so we're bringing people to you tonight.
Is there an opportunity to repurpose some positions?
We
Do
have
these
no
buildings have enrichment teachers?
We do have enrichment teachers.
Is it treated as a special?
Yes.
So maker space, or, so enrichment is a special, it's a pullout that all kids get?
Yes.
So even if the board,
And that's new this, yeah, Lucy, do you want to speak to that or no? So we've made some changes to enrichment that Lucy can speak to, but they are scheduled with students, so.
So it's not really an enrichment program, so then what is it?
It's more of an innovation teacher, so we're making some changes to the enrichment program. Lucy can speak specifically about it.
So it is makerspace, it is STEAM, it's called an innovation special. We needed to use the people that we had as enrichment teachers to fill the open UA with the removal of FLES, so that we had 5 UAs in the week. The intention of it is to be innovation-based. In some schools, they are going back to their makerspace days. In some schools, they're going more design process, and we're working on consistency of that special, but it is now a full-time teaching position with 6 classes in a day.
Hang on. What are the UAs now? We have
Art, music, PE, tech, and innovation.
Tech and innovation. So there's no literacy. Where does the library come into that?
So library pushes into co-teach with teachers in each grade level. Their curriculum, if you line it up to the ELA curriculum, is very similar, so they push in to help with informational text, informational writing. They also work with other teachers, tech, innovation, to do more project-based learning that is in the classroom.
Are our librarians certified teachers? Classroom teachers?
Yes.
So potentially, we could have library as a special and have enrichment teachers be doing enrichment. We just have not chosen that model.
Correct. We did not move that forward when we made these changes back in the spring. We were potentially in a different place.
So now we're in the place of having kids 26 in a room and needing a classroom teacher at the last minute. I mean, I think that maybe we need to shift the model and think about offering library as a special instead of an enrichment, which really isn't enrichment. I guess it's makerspace or innovation or whatnot. I know as a classroom teacher myself, I would prefer to have less in my classroom. I think asking a 5th grade or a 4th grade to have 26 in a room, all things considered, as Kristen said, is asking a lot. I think having some flexibility in maybe our UA model might alleviate that.
Okay, so just because I want to understand what you're saying, and I think I understand. So you're basically saying we need 3 more teachers because of these class sizes, to reduce those class sizes. And you think the enrichment teachers should be pulled in to teach these 3 classes, and that library would become a special? And that would allow us to have people that are already on the ground in the district do this. That's what you're asking?
That would be what I would advocate for at this point.
What is your thought on that? Sorry, this is probably a big question to be asking at 10 o'clock at night.
We can certainly have discussion about anything. The first thing that pops into my mind is we would have to discuss equity, because you're talking about 3 buildings, 3 positions, and we have 4 schools. So that would mean that one school was receiving something that other schools are not.
Well,
Unless you just use the enrichment teacher as an enrichment teacher and also have the library at that school as a special.
So we can bring that back certainly to Dr. Cochran. I do want to be clear that we repurposed enrichment, and it is not enrichment anymore. So those positions were repurposed through many conversations to be innovation teachers.
Is there a curriculum for that? That like, does the state require innovation? And is there a curriculum that teacher would be
We have
required
identified,
to teach?
yes, we have identified the curriculum that they're teaching, but it is not singularly theirs. It's connected to the math, the science curriculum at the grade level with some expectations around the reading and writing skills.
So it sounds like to pull them would have the least impact.
I don't know if I can answer directly.
Well, because
it requires more than just innovation. It also impacts library, and that will have an impact to the program that they run. So I would say that is a decision that we need to have a conversation about and the impacts in order to make a decision. I singularly don't want to say whether or not that's going to impact or not impact in a way.
It just seems like a little redundancy to me, innovation and library. And, you know, that they both do connect to the classroom, and I understand how they do. But at a time where we have 26 and we're going to be starting school soon, I think we need to be looking at shifting the model to accommodate.
are you looking at shifting the model to accommodate in the short term and then backfilling those? Or just, which, would that be something that would be palatable, I guess, so to speak? I think what I've heard from the board members is we don't want these large classes. So it looks like the board would need to approve 3 more positions, which, Maria, I think we do have 3 open positions in the budget because the plus positions are still in the current operating budget. Those could be repurposed, could they not?
We really ought to put a microphone over there.
Yeah. She needs to move on.
No.
You get your steps in.
So the flex positions are in the voted budget, but we have to remember that we removed about $2 million from both of the budgets. So the net impact is, I mean, the budgets have the same amount of funds that we removed, right?
Right, I understand that, but right now I'm just looking at positions. So the board would not need to vote new positions because we already have, I know you're saying we have
Right,
open
we have
positions,
teaching
but
positions, yes.
unbeknownst to you, we do have open positions because the budget committee left less in the voted budget, even though the school board took it out, and the voted budget was what passed. So we do have open positions in the budget.
There should be 6 of them.
Correct. Well, no, we did repurpose some of that money at the last meeting.
Okay.
We moved some money for the water treatment system. So I guess the point here is that we're trying to bring 3 more teachers on board to reduce these class sizes. There's money there are positions in the budget. What can we do to make it happen?
Well, it's just the majority, does the majority
But I guess
of the board agree that 26 is too much in a classroom? Like,
well,
I mean, before we spend.
yeah, so is the board, if you look at this preliminary board, is the board in agreement that because we are approaching the maximum class size per policy, that we want to try to open up another, I guess, section or class for each of those?
So in Atkinson Academy, 4th grade, we're approaching the 26, that we have 2 classes. If we went to 3, those numbers would drop down to 17 per class, which is what the average is for most of our classes, correct? Pollard School, 4th grade, same thing. We have 3 classes with 25.3 kids per class. If we went to another section, that would drop that down to about 19 per class. In Sandown, we have 3 sections with 25 each. If we went to 4, it would be 19 each, which makes it all our average and manageable for the teachers.
Kelly, then Brian?
I mean, I'm always in favor of smaller classes. I just feel like hiring 3 people in a week, like, I think we're gonna, and probably end up starting the school year with large
terms
classes.
of, or how would it start?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my question then is, it would take a little while presumably to hire good teachers.
That was my
We're really
advocacy
good
and
at
change.
I'm sure you are.
At this point, we're turning people over in a day or two.
Okay.
We can post the positions and potentially fill the positions with people we know are still in the pools. I think the conversation that we're having, and we had it prior to today or prior to this summary going out, is we're really going to need to know the threshold. So we've given you those that are at that bubble. And as Sandy explained, that's 2 students away from capacity, but we have other grades that are 3, 4 students away from capacity. And so if we add those 3 classrooms, which is fantastic, it's going to help those highlighted spaces, but we could have 4 kids move into another grade level and now they're at capacity. And so for us to know the threshold that the board would like to turn over and come back with those numbers.
I think that's kind of dependent on the social distancing and the size of the classrooms. Can you fit 26 kids in the current classroom with 3-foot distancing?
So Pollard grade 4, which is one of those highlights, is the grade that is not able to meet 3 feet. Every other grade in every other school has told us that they've measured and they are able to meet 3 feet distancing in all of those rooms.
Dr. Cochran?
Question, if we bring on 3 teachers, do we have UA coverage for 3 extra classes?
Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to check before the board made a decision.
Brian?
I get, do you even have the classes,
Yes.
the building?
Yes.
So
We
these
checked
are,
that first.
so this is just empty classrooms right now?
Yes. We have the space. At Sandown North, it will be the most difficult. They're going to have to move people around. But both Pollard and Atkinson have a room they can use for a classroom.
Well, that's my concern. My concern, you just addressed the first one. And obviously the second one is, I would talk about getting in the weeds. I would think it's up to you guys to tell us if there's an issue. You know, I heard people earlier tonight push it on to the administration, something that's clearly our responsibility. This is clearly your responsibility.
Well, they did. They told us. We got a highlighted list of numbers.
Yeah.
And our policy is 26. So that's why the discussion's on the table.
Which is less than the state mandated number.
Correct.
And then what happens next year? I mean, so we hire these positions for this year and this, so what does it look like the next year?
Well, sometimes teachers don't get renewed if there's a drop in enrollment. That happens all the time.
Well, they need to money. Right. You
Right.
shift them around
Yeah.
where the population,
All
where
right.
you have the highest amount.
So at this point, it does not sound like we want to move in that direction, or
I'm
not?
gonna put a motion to hire these because of the social distancing and everything. And we have it in the budget, and we have the classrooms. I motion that we hire 3 teachers for the 4th and 5th grades.
A second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Discussion, I guess.
Kelly,
Can you just one more time highlight, I know, I understand the position you're in, but highlight why maybe we wouldn't want to do that for me? Like, what's your argument against hiring teachers right now? Or what's the argument, not your argument, I know it's not you.
What's the argument?
Yes.
I don't think there would be an argument. As Sandy said, we will get them posted, we will interview people, we will try to fill those positions. There's a chance, right, that we don't find qualified teachers in a week to fill those classrooms.
And what would you do in that situation?
Yeah. Make a motion.
I mean, do you start with the long-term stuff? I mean, what do you, I mean, that's.
Can we repurpose those folks that are already familiar and hire for the UA?
I'm looking at Dana just because I feel like that's an HR question.
You know what, I think that's beyond our purview. I mean, the board is voting whether or not we want to move to basically add three more positions.
Agree. I think that it's just good to voice concern that, you know, a first grader may have an idea that they're getting a teacher and then may enter the building and have a long-term sub for the first 8 weeks and then, you know, have a different teacher. That's a lot of transition.
Just for clarity, we're just talking about those 3 bubble classrooms, correct?
Correct.
4th and 5th grade.
Correct.
Yeah, the 2
Correct.
fourths at Atkinson and Pollard and the
Talking
5th
about.
at Sandown. And it sounds like Pollard has the bigger concern because of the space situation. They can't social distance in the rooms that they're in at that level.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion on the floor and a second to allow 3 more positions for this academic year. All in favor? 7. Opposed? 2?
I do have one more question, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Lucy, talk to me about TLC. I do this every year. TLC, 36 enrolled, 4 classes, 9 in each class, and at what point are we gonna max out on those? Because I know we bring them in, right? All year long. So could you do me a very large favor? I mean, I will ask the chair for it again, but come December, I wanna see these numbers again.
Sure.
Because I wanna see what the progression is, because looking at it every year, it drives me insane. Because I never know what the end result is.
And the number is very difficult to report in that pre-K because some students are coming for half a day, and some students are staying a full day with their peer partners, and we don't like to count them twice because then it inflates the class size numbers, but some of those classes will not have 9, they might have 12 kids because the kids were in the morning class and now they're staying for the afternoon. So that number is a much more difficult number to accurately represent than the other grade levels that is simply a total and divided by number of classrooms. We do have a plan that we've been discussing with Principal Liff, and Chris Cullen is helping us with that, those transitional 3s, a new plan on how we're going to roll them in instead of just placing them in the class that has been ongoing. And all of that will also happen as we enter this year with our feasibility study around our 3s and 4s.
It's just that, you know, you look at a number and it's 9 and you could put 17 in a class, but it's 9. So every year it makes me a little crazy, especially when I'm looking at these other ones that are 26.
Yeah,
So,
and our numbers are about more towards the 12 number.
and I get that they're
Yeah.
early education, I get that there's a difference, but it just still makes me cuckoo.
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
thank you.
There is another consideration for the ratio for students who are identified for special education. We cannot exceed the total number of 12 students unless we have a 50% ratio of non-identified and identified students. So, but there are some ways that we can report it, I think. It's a little bit more complicated, but we can do a better job in making that report to the board so there is an understanding of how many students are actually placed in each classroom and when. So
That's
we're working on that.
regulated, correct?
I'm sorry?
That's federally regulated, that's IDEA.
Yes, that is IDEA, yes.
Okay.
If it's easier in December, we can also report on Class A has this total, Class B has this total, rather than trying to average.
Because I just want to see how these kids roll, because I know they roll in all year long.
Yep.
But I'm just kind of curious of the end result, what do we have, you know?
Yep, we can absolutely do that when it doesn't have to fit in the chart like everything
Thank
else.
you. Yeah, that's why I mentioned it separately. Thank you. You're up, Chris. That's it.
That's all we have on that. Thank you very much, appreciate it. So the next order of business is the administrator's report.
The administrator's report has one item, and that is informational in nature regarding the replacement of the SAU 55 sign to the left of the front door of the SAU and replacing it with a new SAU 106 sign. Exterior sign, stand up to the weather, total cost $1,400. Did our student artwork go into part of this design? Yes, no, Maria?
Signs?
Yes? The logo piece we did, so it's partly a result of the student. Multiple students submitted logos and designs, and the top one was selected, and the students involved were given a nominal gift to thank them for their work. So we have a hole in the wall that we need to fill with something decorative that actually lets people know that we're SAU 106, and that's where to find us.
Okay.
I don't believe this requires approval of the board. I believe it's just informational. Maria? Is that correct? This is informational to the board and not requiring board approval, correct? Okay. And that's the administrator's report.
That's it? Short and sweet tonight. All right, now personnel report.
Personnel report, we have handed you out a sheet which adds one individual to your list.
Listen, I'd like to make a motion to approve Cheryl Clark, Kansas Ferguson, Denise Georgiudis. Sorry if I killed it.
I'm glad you're making this motion. Go ahead.
Sorry if I killed it. Cheryl Goodman, Brian Nickel, Laurie Runyons, and Lisa Badala.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Kelly. Any discussion on any of that? Not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? 9-0.
And now I want to make a motion in regards to resignation.
I'm sorry, 8-0, sorry, 8-0, Kim left. Kim had to leave. My apologies.
Resignations. I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation of Maya Brennan, Kristen Saltis, and Karen Malone with gratitude and thanks. And Karen Malone, you will be greatly missed.
Do I have a second on Sheila's motion?
Second.
Second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 8-0. Do we have any committee reports or other reports by the school board tonight?
No.
I do not believe so.
No, none. Moving right along. We don't have a correspondence folder. Vendor and payrolls, everything up to date, signed that we need done. Are we waiting on signatures? Oh, vendor payroll, everything's current. You're not.
One went out today, Kristen.
Right. I'm just making sure. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so if not, we're going to return back to the delegates and individuals under other business, and we'll continue with those. And we're under the same guidelines as before, with a 3-minute time limit. Sheila, if you could assist me with that. So the first one is Brian, is it Gousens? From Sandown, did Brian leave? Laura Roy would be next, from Plasto. And after Laura will be Stephanie Doobie.
I understand that as of this was before your last vote, but I was going to say, I understand that as of right now, masks are optional, and I'm continuing to speak to keep masks optional no matter what, in order to keep our kids healthy from further mental health damage. We can't keep flip-flopping going into the 3rd school year of this. There are some people whose choice is to make the choice for everyone else and require universal masking. They feel that they are doing it for the greater good. Really, they are putting further unnecessary burden on our kids. There are some people whose choice it is to make their own choice for their own family regarding masking. They realize that the threat of a serious illness is minimal, but that the real harm has already happened. And kids are struggling socially, emotionally, psychologically, developmentally, physically, and academically. No one wants the schools to close with no remote option available, and some think
that masks are the answer, but how can they be when kids don't even wear them correctly, therefore rendering them ineffective? New Hampshire DHHS states, quote, "The effectiveness of masks and other face coverings is impacted by proper handling and use. And young children are more likely to play with masks, adjust them, or remove them without washing their hands before or after touching them, which can potentially put them and other students at risk," unquote. Yet some people think it's okay and protective to let children sit in a soiled mask for 7 hours a day. Masks are not one-size-fits-all approach. They are not normal or natural, and they are a huge burden for some. Forcing a child to wear a mask that is not comfortable with it is contradictory to what we parents teach our kids about not doing anything to their bodies that doesn't feel good, and not letting others make their bodies feel uncomfortable and violated. But it's okay to allow this because it's for the greater good of society, right? And adults don't have mask mandates, so it's okay to put all the fear, burden, and responsibility on our kids, right? But both of these choices infringe on the rights of others, and both of them benefit the greater good being the kids, because adults are already protected. Can anyone actually answer the following questions? Who is right? Which concerns are more important? Do we protect them from a virus that many have a vaccine or natural antibodies for, and that, according to the CDC, rarely affects healthy kids? Or do we protect them from the further social, emotional, psychological, physical, developmental, and academic harm? Or can we do both? Whose comfort level is more important? How do we make everyone feel comfortable? Do people even care anymore? How are we going to fix the damage that's already been done? The ones who want to make the choice for all can't expect to do nothing in return. You'll need to help figure out how to help the struggling kids that you choose to mask. How do we come to a compromise? I think the one thing we can all agree on is that masks are controversial. There are so many other precautions we can take. CDC says that layered prevention strategies work best. Masks are just one of them. They are not necessarily the best. Since they are so controversial, would it be acceptable to incorporate 16 other prevention strategies and keep masks optional? And I have a list of, just off the top of my head.
Thank you, Laura. No, sure. Stephanie?
A list of the harm that's already been caused by masks.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Stephanie, and then after Stephanie, Kevin Dewey. Stephanie Dewey, New Hampshire. Oh, is your mic on? There you go.
So for the past 4 months, parents and taxpayers have come before this board. In every single school board meeting since May, there have been people in attendance who have spoken for parental choice. What is it going to take to listen to them and not give in to fear-based tactics? Where is the equity in requiring masks for all? Have you not learned anything in the past 18 months? Requiring children to wear masks when A, they don't work to prevent transmission, and B, they're harmful for a multitude of reasons, is child abuse. To quote another parent who said, "Having a kid wear a mask to prevent getting or transmitting CV-19 is like having a kid wear a helmet every day to prevent an asteroid from hitting them in the head. It's asinine and akin to a child abuse." And that's what you all did, you 7-2. That's what you did. It was real brave, real brave. Should you move forward, well, since you moved forward with the mask mandate, you're going to be putting parents in an incomprehensible position. Now, they have a choice whether or not to keep a roof over their kids' heads and send their kids to school with a mask, or leave their job to homeschool their children. Either way, they lose. To force parents to make an economic decision over a philosophical or medical one is evil, pure and simple. It is evil. As I stated at the last meeting, these parents won't stop. There will be lawsuits, you will all be put on notice and served with an indemnification agreement, and parents are going to use every tool possible to free themselves and their kids from this tyranny.
Next is Kevin Dewey, and then Isabel Gautreaux.
Okay, my concern is the sickness of people feeling it's their duty or righteous belief that they can control others and violate others' rights. That's the biggest sickness I see here. And whether you're aware, corporate elite have waged war on our Constitution, our rights, humanity in general, over the last 25 years. And corporate influence, elite influence over all the bodies that you guys get all your information from, either influence or complete capture over that. You're answering to corporate elite. You're not answering to us. And corporate elite doesn't care about your health. It doesn't care about my health. It doesn't care about anybody's health. It cares about control. That's all they want is control. And they control through fear. Fear through you fearing, scaring the kids, scaring the parents. That's control. Fear controls. And, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, I'm worked up. But Awakened Humanity isn't going to deal with this anymore. It's a war on our humanity, our Constitution. It's not going to stand for it anymore. And you are waging this war for them. You're the foot soldiers here, whether you know it or not. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you're not aware of it, but you are. You're implementing that war on humanity. And history is going to record where you stood on this. It'll record it, and you'll have to sleep at night, and you'll be judged at a later date when you meet your maker or whatever, when you have to deal with this. But the Awakened Humanity is not going to deal with this. This agenda is going to fail, and you will all be judged on this. Humanity will not stand for this.
Is Isabel Gautreaux here? How about Emily Hanna? And after Emily is Beth Feener. If Beth is here.
Emily Hannay, Plastow, New Hampshire. This bucket must be for when I get sick, right? Because this is sick, what just happened today, okay? And first, I want to thank you for splitting up the time so that you made a decision after, when everyone didn't get a chance to speak. So what does this even mean? This means nothing because you already made your decision. It's like, and what's the difference between if you're hearing me now or if you heard me prior? At least maybe you get some knowledge or you see where I'm coming from. But no, I guess you already made your mind up. So I have some notes here from what you guys were saying. Dr. Cochran, you said let's see how things go in 3 weeks. I'm making a decision now whether to pull my kid out or not. Not in 3 weeks. I'm not sending her to school in a mask. I'm not making her feel like she's a walking health hazard. It's sick. So here's what I was going to say, okay? Contrary to what you might hear, not all doctors and professionals that don't recommend masks are quacks. Due to lack of time, I will highlight one. Michael Ahlstrom, Director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. He sounds qualified to me. I don't know if you guys agree, but I mean, he doesn't sound like he's just some, and this is on PBS, not some crazy right-wing conspiracy TV or whatever you guys think that we come up with when we come up here. He says that without regard to what humans do, you see these big surges. So without regard to what humans do, you see these big surges that last about 5 to 8 weeks. And even though the virus has more people to burn through, it dies down and we don't know why. He says he has been voicing his concerns since back in April of 2020, and he is disappointed in his colleagues and believes that they are doing the public a disservice. Cloth masks offer very little impact on reducing the amount of the virus people inhale in or out. Studies show that a person might get infected after being in a room after 15 minutes, and a cloth covering will give you an additional 5 minutes. That's not me, that's him saying this, okay? And so I'm asking, are those additional 5 minutes worth the risk? Laura just handed you a paper of all the negative consequences that our kids have had over the past year. So is an extra 5 minutes worth all of that? I say no. So I am a parent that is in favor of choice. And I'm not advocating for it, I'm demanding it. I can no longer allow the school board to make decisions based in fear. We have to be the adults in the room, and it is time for some sober reasoning and reflection. Can any of you look me in the eyes and tell me that the trespasses against my daughter's rights is justified because masks work and they do no harm?
Thank you.
Can any of you do that? You can't.
Thank you.
That's the answer, is no. So you shouldn't be able to.
And is Beth here? Okay. That is the end of the delegates and individuals.
And I filed an R right to
Excuse
know,
me, Kate.
91A, 91A, July 12th.
We have no
July
other business
12th.
tonight?
You are 5 weeks beyond your legal
We have no other
rights.
business? Meeting
5
adjourned.
weeks.
10:27, meeting adjourned.
5 weeks. 5 weeks ago, I asked for the overhead video footage of my